That's a bunch of students. It's been described as a bunch of white students chanting "Build a Wall" in their lunchroom. There are a lot of anecdotal reports of children behaving this way in kind of a hostile way towards other children who are minorities. I'm wondering, Kaylee, I asked this of Reince Priebus, do you think, obviously this is a wonderful day for Trump supporters, there are a lot of people who, like Simone and like Anna, are scared about what a Trump presidency might mean for them as minorities. And there are a lot of, I'm hearing from a lot of them as well. Now, we've seen evidence of there's viral video out there of people being violent towards Trump supporters, and that's not acceptable either. But I'm wondering, do you think the President-elect should do something to send a signal, to welcome, to try to be a unifier?
I think he did. I think the first words that came out of his mouth as President-elect of the United States were, number one, Hillary Clinton fought a tough fight. Number two, I want to lead a movement of all races for all religions, an inclusive movement. And President Obama, Josh Earnest indicated today, saw those words and was reassured by them. And that's why you saw President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump go into a room, supposed to be a 10, 15-minute meeting. It ended up being an hour and a half, and they came out with a unified front. That is the type of leadership we are going to see, someone who can speak to the other side, someone who can come up with solutions, someone who can get things done.
I would just disagree. I don't think President Obama saw or heard Donald Trump's words, President-elect Trump's words, and took that as a real olive branch or took it to heart. I think President Obama has been the epitome of class, grace, of doing what you need to do as commander-in-chief, and that's what he did going in and sitting with Donald Trump today. So I just really think we have to remember the marginalized in this country. We have to remember the people of color, the women, the Muslims, people who are living in fear, who are scared because Donald Trump gave a platform for the alt-right.
Jake, this is such an important point. I have gotten so many calls, so many emails from people who are so afraid and who are telling me things that are happening out there that should make all of us just sad as Americans. And I do think, I urge President Trump to tell his followers to follow his suit in being conciliatory and being inclusive and not harassing other people because they may not sound like them or look like them or think like them.
And he has.
He's
made multiple calls for unity. He's made multiple calls for unity.
Kaylee, Simone, Anna, thank you so much. Appreciate it. An invitation to Moscow. That's what the Russian Foreign Ministry says it extended to the Trump campaign and the Clinton campaign during the campaign season. So did anyone show up? We'll go to Moscow next. Welcome back. We're back with our world lead now. We may soon have the Russian reset part 2. With Donald Trump moving into the White House in just 71 days, Russia is hoping to end years of icy tensions with the U.S., tensions based on Russia's incursions into neighboring countries, horrific human rights record, and support for brutal leaders such as Bashar al-Assad. And it appears that the Kremlin has been preparing for this day for some time now. A Russian government official telling CNN that the Russian Foreign Ministry not only had been in touch with both the Clinton and Trump campaigns, but invited members of both campaigns to Moscow. Let's bring in CNN senior international correspondent Clarissa Ward. Clarissa, surprisingly, some campaign members actually did travel to the Kremlin during the campaign, according to this official, right?
Well, there's a lot of confusion here. What we're seeing basically, Jake, is a he said, she said, with the Russian Foreign Ministry representative this morning saying that the Kremlin had contacts with the Trump campaign throughout the presidential race. That claim was rebutted by the Trump campaign. Then later in the day, a different Foreign Ministry spokesperson came forward and said that they had contact with the Clinton campaign and that the Trump campaign had only been in contact with embassy officials in the U.S. In either case, Jake, both the Clinton and the Trump campaigns completely denying these allegations, and really everyone now focused on what the Trump presidency means for the future of U.S.-Russian relations. Take a look.
Now that the celebrations are over, the hard work of repairing U.S.-Russian relations begins. President Putin acknowledged the challenges even as he congratulated President-elect Trump.
We have heard his electoral slogans when he was still a candidate. He spoke about resuming and restoring relations with Russia. We understand the way to that will be difficult, taking into account the current state of degradation of relations between Russia and the United States.
Tensions between the two countries have skyrocketed in recent years, with profound disagreements over Russia's aggression in Ukraine and Syria, NATO expansion, and most recently, alleged Russian hacking of Democratic Party emails. Trump has been critical of NATO and has indicated he may accept Russia's annexation of Crimea from Ukraine, music to Russia's ears.
Look at it, but you know, the people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
He has also refused to finger Russia for the email hacks, has suggested working with them in Syria in the fight against ISIS, and has spoken positively about President Putin. The big question here in Russia is whether U.S. sanctions, which have crippled the economy, will be dropped. Still, Russian Senator Andrei Klimov says there is much more optimism now than there was just a few days ago.
Do you think that this new Trump era can be a better relationship for Russia?
He declared already that he is ready for such kind of future. Who knows what's happened in reality, but I do hope that we have a chance now.
People we spoke to seem to agree.
Why do you think he'll be good?
I think he will be good, this man tells us, because he's been a businessman a long time and had a lot of success. The relationship between the U.S. and Russia depends on this president. Of course it's very important. Everybody was watching these elections, but time will tell, as they say. And people here will be watching his first moves closely.
Today, a Putin spokesman came out and said, Jake, get this, that Trump and Putin's foreign policies are, quote, phenomenally close, for whatever that exactly means. Jake?
Clarissa Ward in Moscow, thank you so much. Before he was president-elect, Donald Trump called upon Hillary Clinton to shut down the Clinton Foundation. But should President-elect Trump close any of his 500-plus businesses now that he's about to be in the business of running the nation? CNN's Christina Alessi joins me now. And Christina, legally, Trump doesn't have to relinquish his duties, you say, except for one caveat. What is it?
That's right, Jake. Just to put this into context, the U.S. has just elected a president who runs a vast, complicated, and a very private business, and there is nothing standing in his way if he wants to back policies that would directly enrich him and his family, according to the ethics experts I spoke with. Look, there is no law, to your point, that dictates how presidents handle conflicts of interest. There's only an expectation that the presidents will step away or sell the companies they own. Then they put that into a so-called blind trust run by someone with no connections to the president. Now, that said, to your point, ethics experts are pointing to a clause in the Constitution that prohibits gifts or salaries from foreign governments or state-owned companies. Now, the lawyers call this clause the emoluments clause. It basically says that no government official can accept money from a foreign government. But experts don't know whether this clause applies to Trump's businesses because, after all, these are deals, not gifts. He has golf courses in Scotland. His name is on buildings in India, Turkey, and the Philippines. So clearly, lots of business interest and very complicated to get through all of that and see what the implications are.
Fascinating, a real thorny issue. Christina Alessi, thank you so much. He came close to defeating Hillary Clinton in the primaries. Now Bernie Sanders weighing in on President-elect Trump. He'll join us next. Stay with us.
Happening now, breaking news, face-to-face. The White House transition begins as President-elect Donald Trump sits down with President Obama in the Oval Office. Putting animosity aside, they pledge to cooperate for the benefit of the country. Capitol thrill. Trump goes and meets with the GOP congressional leadership and says he can't wait to get down to work. But as Trump gets a view from the House Speaker's balcony, do they see eye to eye on how to move forward? The standard bearer, former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, warns Trump not to turn against minorities. With Hillary Clinton vanquished, is Bernie Sanders now the voice of the Democratic Party? He'll join me this hour for his first television interview since the election. And from Russia, much love. Russian lawmakers toasted Donald Trump's victory, and Vladimir Putin was among the first to congratulate him. Now Russia says it was in close touch with Trump's team during the campaign and is ready for cooperation. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we're going to the breaking news right now. President-elect Donald Trump meets at the White House with President Obama alone in the Oval Office for 90 minutes. Let that sink in. For years, Trump spearheaded the so-called birther movement that tried to deny President Obama's legitimacy to lead. And the meeting comes just days after President Obama mocked Trump as unfit for the responsibilities of the job. But after their talk, both men set aside any hostility and vowed to work together for the good of the nation. Obama told Trump, if you succeed, the country succeeds. Trump called the visit a great honor and called Obama a very good man. The president-elect then went to Capitol Hill, where he met with the House Speaker Paul Ryan and the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Trump had frosty relations with both men during the campaign. At one point, Ryan would barely mention him by name. Trump's agenda is a rejection of so much of what Ryan has stood for, but the speaker now says they'll hit the ground running. And Trump says, and I'm quoting him now, we can't get started fast enough. Former Democratic presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders will join me for his first television interview since the election. And I'll speak also with Republican Congressman Sean Duffy. Our correspondents, analysts, and guests, they will have full coverage of the day's top stories. Let's begin with our White House correspondent, Michelle Kaczynski. Michelle, the image alone is truly extraordinary. Donald Trump and Barack Obama together in the Oval Office and saying very nice things about each other. Tell us about this historic meeting.
Right, reassuring and everyone on their best behavior is, I think, how you can describe this. I mean, on the one hand, you have this highly organized transition with handshakes, good wishes on all sides. But then on the other, you have this intense bitterness from the campaign trail. And the White House today didn't hold back either from saying that President Obama meant every word he has said about Donald Trump, that he's unfit, that the president has deep concerns. Well, none of that has changed, but today was all about working together to move forward despite those differences. Donald Trump arrives in Washington on his 757 and heads straight to the White House as president-elect, meeting with President Obama alone in the Oval Office that will soon be his.
We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces.
Donald Trump calling his fierce political rival a good man.
This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
President Obama telling reporters he wants to help Trump succeed.
My number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
When asked, though, the White House press secretary said all those warnings from President Obama on the campaign trail about Trump, that he's dangerous, unqualified, still hold.
Well, does the president now have any reason to believe that Donald Trump is fit to be president of the United States?
Again, I'm not going to, the two men did not relitigate their differences in the Oval Office.
After years of acrimony.
I think President Obama has been the most ignorant president in our history.
Today, it was President Obama telling President-elect Donald Trump the tricks of the trade.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going to be taking any questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Here's a good rule. Don't answer the questions when they just start.
Very good man.
Thank you, guys.
Also today, you had Vice President Joe Biden meeting with Mike Pence, the First Lady and Melania Trump having tea together and touring the White House. For President Obama, though, clearly the gorilla in the room was that Donald Trump has said many times he wants to roll back as many of President Obama's policies as possible. The White House, though, didn't want to talk about that today. They said this was all about the transition, and both of them are committed to that. Wolf?
All right, Michelle, thank you. Michelle Kaczynski is over at the White House. Let's turn now to Donald Trump's meetings with GOP congressional leaders. Our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash, is with me. Trump, he's had various differences, as you well know, with both Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. So what was the mood like today?
Well, it certainly seemed to be a very different situation, just like it was at the White House with President Obama. As you said, the relationship between Donald Trump and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, the leaders who he will work with now, who in this total Republican government, it's been less than stellar. He didn't even get the sort of the benefit of them saying his name. They would just call him the nominee. But today, Donald Trump, like he did at the White House, really put out many olive branches. Let's watch.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Speaker, it's been an honor. We had a meeting. Met with the president, as you know, before. That was an excellent meeting. We just spent quite a bit of time together. I think we're going to do some absolutely spectacular things for the American people. We look forward to starting. In fact, truthfully, we can't get started fast enough. And whether it's healthcare or immigration, so many different things. We'll be working on them very rapidly, and I think we'll be putting things up pretty quickly. So we had a very good meeting, a very detailed meeting, and we're going to lower taxes, as you know. We're going to fix healthcare and make it more affordable and better. And we're going to do a real job for the public, and that's what we want to do, and that's why we're excited.
And, you know, Donald Trump has the good fortune of coming into the White House with a Republican Congress, particularly in the House, but both chambers, where they have been working very hard in the opposition party on an agenda, which so on many of these issues that he was talking about, tax reform, especially, obviously, healthcare is going to be a big one because they have been trying for years and years and years to repeal Obamacare. But of course, then they need something to replace it with. House Republicans in particular say they have a plan. They can pass it because they have the votes. We'll see how that sort of works its way through to the White House. So the fact that they are all together, the fact that he has partners who run Congress is absolutely fascinating. And of course, when it comes to the Senate, the number one thing he's going to do is nominate a Supreme Court justice to fill Antonin Scalia's seat. It
will have to be confirmed by the members of
the U.S. Senate. That
will be very, very important. What are you hearing about the White House Chief of Staff under the incoming President-elect Donald Trump? I know you're doing some serious reporting on this.
I am told that the person that Donald Trump wants as his Chief of Staff is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, who is formerly of Breitbart News, the conservative website, who has been a very integral part of Donald Trump's campaign, particularly in recent months. Had been traveling with him. He has really become a trusted advisor to Donald Trump. However, I'm also told that there are people in Trump's orbit who are trying to convince him that that is a bad idea. First and foremost, they're saying that the most important, you covered the White House for years, the most important trait that a chief of staff should have is knowing how to get the trains running and keeping them running on time and organizing, and that might not be the best quality that Steve Bannon has. These are people who are trying to convince Trump not to do it. And the other is, as I said, he was Breitbart. And so that is very appealing to the many people who got Trump elected. But for the people like Paul Ryan and like Mitch McConnell and others, Breitbart has been the thorn in their side for a long time. That might not be the best foot to start off on. And the other person I'm told that is very much on the list is Reince Priebus.
Reince Priebus, the Republican Party chairman, and Steve Bannon was the CEO during the Trump campaign. Dana, good reporting. Thanks
Thank you
very much. The former Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders is warning Donald Trump not to turn the people's anger against minorities. The senator from Vermont is joining us now live for his first TV interview since the election. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So a key reason why Donald Trump won was his anti-trade message that appealed to a lot of voters in states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, very similar to your own message that you used throughout your campaign against Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination. If you had been his competitor, and that's a big if you had been his competitor, Senator, do you think you could have beaten him?
I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to do Monday morning quarterbacking right now. The election is over. Donald Trump won. Between you and me, Wolf, I would have loved to have had the opportunity to run against them, but that did not end up being the case. Right now, where we are is where we are. I intend to work with President Trump on those issues where he will, in fact, work for the middle class and working families of this country. I will vigorously oppose him if he appeals to racism or sexism or some of the other discriminatory measures that he brought up during his campaign.
But it never crossed your mind that you might have done better against him? You might have actually won if you had been the Democratic nominee?
What good does it do now? You know, the election is over, and, you know, Hillary, I did my best to see that Hillary Clinton get elected. I was out in some 12 states during the last week with I think 21 rallies. So the election is over, and we've got to look to the future. And what we have got to demand, I think, is that Mr. Trump keep the promises that he made to working families. You'll remember, Wolf, he talked about how he was going to be a champion of working families. Well, I hope he will raise the minimum wage so that people who are working for $9 or $10 an hour get the kind of raise they're entitled to. I hope he will do pay equity for women. Women should not be getting 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. I hope he'll rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, and I look forward to working with him if he chooses to do that and create millions of decent paying jobs. And on trade, absolutely we need a new trade policy. I will work with him to get corporate America to start investing in this country, not just in China and in Mexico. I hope, you know, he told the American people, Wolf, that he didn't have to pay any taxes. He is a multi-billionaire. He doesn't have to pay a nickel in federal taxes because he knows how corrupt the tax system is. Well, if he knows how corrupt that system is, I hope very much that he'll work with progressives to create a tax system which, in fact, asks billionaires and multinational corporations to stop paying their fair share of taxes.
Senator, did you personally advise Hillary Clinton to spend more time talking about those issues specifically to working class white voters in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, issues that you championed?
Well, I think it's no secret that our campaign had an impact, a significant impact on the Democratic platform. No secret that Secretary Clinton supported the Democratic platform, which I think is a document that, if adopted, will transform this country. So I think, yes, Secretary Clinton, I think, understood the need to talk about raising the minimum wage to a living wage, to make sure that public colleges and universities in this country are tuition-free, at least for the middle class, to make sure that we do not pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So I think, you know, in that sense, I think Secretary Clinton did listen to what not just I had to say, but many other progressives.
Have you spoken with her since Tuesday night?
I have not. I owe her a call, and I will make that call, but I have not. But I think really now what we have got, so go ahead. I'm sorry, Wolf.
No. Finish your thought, please.
You know, what we have got to be doing now is focusing on the realities of where we are. Donald Trump won the election. He didn't get a majority of the popular vote, but he did win the electoral vote. He will become the next president. And our job is twofold. Our job is to make sure that the anger that so many people in this country feel because they are, in fact, working longer hours for low wages. They're worried about their kids. If they're in rural America, they're seeing their downtown stores boarded up. Their kids are leaving town because there are no jobs in that community. Inner cities, youth unemployment, astronomically high. People are angry. They have a right to be angry, but we have got to channel that anger against the people who caused the decline of the middle class and so many people living in poverty. Not take it out on our neighbors who may happen to be Muslim or Latino or women. That is demagoguery, and I will do everything that I can to oppose that. Let's deal with the real issues, that the rich are getting richer, that we are moving toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economy as a result of Citizens United, control to a significant degree our political system, and, may I say, control our media. So there's a lot of work to be done, but let's not take out our frustration against the poor or minorities.
Senator, I'm curious, what was your reaction Tuesday night as you watched the results come in and she started losing in Florida, North Carolina, Virginia? You were watching, I'm sure you were watching TV. Were you surprised?
Watching CNN, as a matter of fact, Wolf.
Thank you.
I thought as we went into the day that there was a 2-to-1 chance that Hillary Clinton would win. So I thought there was a real possibility that Trump could win. I thought that the likelihood was that Hillary Clinton would win. And I was sad for two reasons. Obviously, I worry very much about some of the very discriminatory and inflammatory things that Trump said during the campaign. This is America, and we are not going to throw out 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. We're not going to turn against one of the largest religions in the world, people who are Muslim. I do not want to see Muslim kids, and we're hearing about this already, who feel intimidated in the country and frightened in living in the country where they grew up. That is not America. We do not want to continue the attacks against women that were so prominent in Trump's campaign. But I hope that on those areas where Trump talked about the needs, where he was right, the middle class, working class of this country is hurting. Let's work together to improve lives for millions of people who are now living in despair and who have the right to do a lot better than they are today.
And I'm sure you're happy, like you, he opposes the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and that apparently is not going to go anywhere under a President Trump. And Senator, you made a big issue out of that as well. You also tweeted a stark warning, though, to Trump today, and I'll put it up on the screen. You tweeted, if Donald Trump takes people's anger and turns it against Muslims, Hispanics, African Americans, and women, we will be his worst nightmare. So tell us what you mean by that. If a President Trump were to enact, for example, a ban on Muslims, a temporary ban, or mass deportations, what will you do about it? You're in the minority in the U.S. Senate.
The overwhelming majority of the American people, including people who voted for Trump, do not agree with those types of policies. And our job is to bring the people together, to organize, to put pressure on the administration and on the Congress not to go through with those policies which are so un-American. Here is the simple truth. The people, so many people in our country, Wolf, are angry because you know why? They've seen their jobs go to China. Their kids can't afford to go to college. They can't afford child care. They can't afford, if they're living in a city, often can't afford the high cost of rent. They're angry. And they're seeing almost all new income and wealth in this country going to the top 1%. Rich are getting richer. Everybody else is getting poorer. That is the reality. But what it would be unacceptable for a president to do is take that anger, that frustration, that hurt, and turn it against the poor, turn it against people of color, turn it against Muslims. That is demagoguery of the worst kind. And if Trump attempts to do that, I will do everything that I can, along with millions of other people in this country, to say, sorry, that is not what the United States of America is about.
So what's your advice, because you disagree with Donald Trump on a lot of these kinds of issues, what's your specific advice, Senator, to Democrats as they deal with Republicans in Congress? Should they obstruct all this kind of potential legislation? What advice do you have for them?
This is what I believe. You know, Trump talked about his concerns about outsourcing, his concerns about a bad trade policy. If he is serious about reforming our trade policies and creating jobs in America and not in China, let us work with him. Trump talked about a corrupt campaign finance system. He's a billionaire. He was able to fund a large part of his campaign. Well, you know what? Not every candidate is a billionaire. If Trump is serious about understanding that we have a corrupt campaign finance system where special interests are able to buy politicians, I would hope that Trump will work with us to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision and move toward a campaign process by which big money and wealthy contributors cannot control the political process. If Trump is serious about his concerns about the needs of working people, let's rebuild the infrastructure. He's talked about that. I've talked about it. We can create millions of jobs rebuilding our roads and our bridges and our water systems, airports, our rail system. If he was not just into campaign rhetoric, and if he was sincere about it, let's work together. So there are a lot of areas I think we can work together if he was sincere in what he said during the campaign. But if he is going to resort to bigotry, trying to divide us up, we will oppose him tooth and nail.
What is your message to the protesters? A lot of young people that we saw in the streets, for example, last night, who are very unhappy with the results. What do you say to those young people, and so many of them, as you know, supported your campaign?
I would say to them, number one, do not despair. Get involved in the political process. The views that we hold, that we should be a vibrant democracy and not move to an oligarchy, the views that we should have a non-discriminatory society, the views that we have got to tackle climate change and transform our energy system, that we need to make our public colleges and universities tuition-free. We have to deal with this grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. All of those issues are what a majority of the American people support. So I would urge those young people, get involved politically. Run for school board, run for state legislature. And by the way, a lot of people have done that. We've got some really good victories as part of an offshoot of what our campaign was about. And so I would say to the young people, get involved, help us oppose Trump when he is wrong, and let's work together to create the kind of nation that most of us know we can become.
Interestingly, Senator, you have not ruled out the possibility of a 2020 run for the White House. Is that something you'd seriously consider?
Well, the last thing in the world after this never-ending campaign, when we have not even sworn in the new president, is to talk about 2020. So let's not go there at all. Right now, what I've got to focus on is doing everything I can as a United States Senator to improve life for a middle class which is hurting today, and to protect the interest of 43 million people who are living in poverty.
That sounds to me, and you're going to be mad at me for pressing you, Senator, but that's my job. It sounds to me like you're not ruling it out.
Well, I would say there will be a whole lot of disappointment in this country if the media starts talking about 2020. We are, the people are tired of never-ending campaigns. Let us focus on the reality of today. Let's focus on the issues impacting the American people, and let's not worry about who's going to be running in 2080 or something like that.
All right. One final question. I know you got to run.
Yeah.
The President Obama, he's right behind me over there in the White House. He's going to be president until January 20th. Would it be a good idea? Do you believe it would be a good idea for President Obama to pardon Hillary Clinton?
To pardon Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton.
In other words,
indicted.
not allow her to be charged with any potential crimes, because there are those in the incoming Trump administration who want a special prosecutor to go ahead and file charges against her. The president, and remember, there was a president when Gerald Ford. We're old enough to remember when Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon. Yeah. Do you think it would be a good idea for this president to pardon Hillary Clinton?
All right. I don't look. President Obama will do what he feels is best, but the idea in a democracy, in the United States of America, that a winning candidate would try to imprison the losing candidate. That's what dictatorships are about. That's what authoritarian countries are about. You do not imprison somebody you ran against because you have differences of opinion. That would be an outrage beyond belief. And I think the vast majority of the American people would find that totally, totally unacceptable to even think about those things.
Senator Sanders, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. I want to show our viewers a picture we just received from the White House showing the First Lady Michelle Obama with the incoming First Lady Melania Trump. They're having tea in the yellow Oval Room in the White House. Very, very nice picture. I'm anxious to hear some more details how that meeting went. I want to get some insight now from a member of the Republican majority in the House of Representatives who will be working closely with Speaker Ryan and President-elect Trump, Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely, Wolf. Thanks for having me on.
So you had President-elect Trump, as you know, he met with your leader, your fellow Wisconsinite, Speaker Paul Ryan. How do you think these two will work together?
I think they work well together. I know both of them. I know Speaker Ryan a little bit better, but both of them want to move an agenda forward to help the American people. And they understand that any problems that came from the campaign won't move that agenda. And so I think, as what you saw today, these two get along. They'll get along well. They'll start talking about policy. Their teams are talking about ideas. And I think this will be symbiotic as they move forward to Inauguration Day.
What's the first big policy move you want President-elect Trump to take on, and he'll be president after January 20th? Once he takes office, what do you think the most important thing he should start working on?
Well, I think we can do a lot of things, but I think we have to work on health care reform. Our American families are getting slaughtered by the cost increases of health care. We need to work on tax reform, regulatory reform, all things that I think will kickstart and grow our economy. I think we have to work on immigration reform, and I think we can get a bipartisan buy-in if we can secure our border to actually get immigration reform done in a way that works. But we're going to talk about ideas that are a little bit different than Bernie Sanders, who you just had on the show. I mean, we don't want to consolidate power in the Washington bureaucrat who think they know better how to run our lives, Wolf. We think Americans and American communities and families better understand how to run their lives and to lift the load of government off their backs and let them run their businesses and their family and spend their money the best way they know how, we think is the most productive way of growing opportunity and jobs in America. I mean, the Democrat idea, I mean, again, you're going to shut down union jobs building the Keystone Pipeline. The fact that you've taken wage increases away because of all of the global warming regulation that has come on our small manufacturing businesses, or the cost increases in healthcare. All of these things have devastated the American middle class, middle income folks. And so we want to make it better. We want to improve that opportunity, improve those wages. And I think Mr. Trump and Mr. Ryan, as a leader in the Congress, can work together to get that agenda accomplished. And there's some big things we can do. And we need to bring Democrats in as well, Wolf. We saw what happened when Barack Obama won and had ultimate power in 2008, and they didn't bring Republicans in. I think you get an electorate backlash if you're not inclusive of the minority party. And so when we do this, I hope that Democrats will reach our extended hand and say, let's work together to get these big things done that Mr. Trump talked about on the campaign trail. But we want to include your ideas, your vision, and your values in this legislation as well. And if we do that, I think America is going to be better for it.
On the issue of health care, Obamacare, does Donald Trump have a plan in place beyond the words repeal and replace? And what would happen to the hundreds of thousands of people in your state in Wisconsin who now do have insurance thanks to Obamacare, especially those with pre-existing conditions? What happens to those folks?
Well, those with pre-existing conditions in Wisconsin, Wolf, already, for the most part, had coverage. We had a high-risk pool. It worked really well. So we want to make sure those all across America who have pre-existing conditions can still get health care coverage. But you can't forget those people in my community as well who have been priced out of health care coverage. Their costs have gone up sometimes 100 to 200% over the course of the Obamacare implementation. And so what we have to do is make sure we have a system in place that can still take care of those low-income folks who need some help to get health care coverage. But we have to let markets work, competition work, and families start to make decisions for themselves. So we in the House have put forward a plan in our Better Way agenda. You can see it on the Speaker's website. And that's going to be the starting point. We got to get Mr. Trump's feedback on health care reform. I'm sure he's going to want to have his imprint on it. But I think we can work with him, and we have to bring Democrats in too then and say, okay, what are your priorities as well? What do you think we're missing? Because what I've heard from Democrats also is Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is not working for middle-income families. Like Bill Clinton said, the guy that's working 60 hours a week and can't afford health care coverage, we need to get their ideas and get a holistic reform approach to health care. And I think all sides can work on that and do it.
Congressman, we're out of time, but I want to give you a shout-out, a congratulatory note. You told me a few weeks ago, when few would have believed it, I looked at the transcript, you said, I think Wisconsin will go to Trump in the end, and guess what? You were right. So many others were wrong. Sean Duffy, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Wolf, I told you Wisconsin was the pathway to 270, and it was. Thanks for having me on.
You were right. All right, thanks so much. And to our viewers, please stay with us for much more breaking news, more information on what happened today in Donald Trump's meetings over at the White House and up on Capitol Hill. We'll be right back. Our breaking news, President-elect Donald Trump came to Washington today for important meetings at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. He said his one-on-one meeting in the Oval Office with President Obama lasted a lot longer than he had expected. He said thought maybe 15 or 20 minutes. They met for more than 90 minutes. Trump then met with Republican leaders up on Capitol Hill, telling reporters his top priorities are immigration and the border, fixing health care, and, quote, big league jobs. Let's get some insight on all of the developments from our political correspondents and experts. And David Chalian, I want to get to that in a second, but quickly your reaction to what we heard from Bernie Sanders, who clearly has a voice in the Democratic Party.
A big voice. You know the expression, politics abhors a vacuum. And it doesn't take long to hear from somebody who wants to clearly be part of setting the direction of what the Democratic Party is in the Trump era. And Bernie Sanders is stepping right up to the plate with you in this interview. He made very clear, Wolf, I think, that he plans on shaping how the Democratic Party is the party in opposition to Donald Trump.
And Mark, he's got a voice there. He's got influence now. He showed what he could do during the primaries.
And he's got a following, and his following is really the left wing of the party and also young people as well. And the fact is, when you pressed him a couple times about perhaps running in 2020, he wouldn't say no to it. So I think in some ways, giddy up to him, right? Like he might be thinking of running.
He's not ruling it out by any means, but how significant of a player is he right now?
Well, very significant, Wolf, because we saw with the vote on Tuesday really a rejection of the sort of moderate Hillary Clinton politics and what many Democrats would argue is the politics of the past for their party. So that sort of cautious establishment brand of politics, really the opposite of what Bernie Sanders was selling in the Democratic primary. And I think many Democrats believe that if the field had not been cleared, if there had been more competition in the primary, they might have had a stronger candidate to compete against Donald Trump.
But the interesting issue will be, what about the Democratic senators who are up for re-election in red states 2 years from now? The Joe Donnellys, the Manchins in West Virginia. Are they going to take a lead from Bernie Sanders? I don't think so. So I think that's a real point of tension with the Democratic Party.
But remember, Bernie Sanders also found this economic populism message that was which is at the root of what helped Donald Trump sort of victory in some of these places. I mean, the notion that everyone who voted for Donald Trump is a sexist or a bigot or whatever, that doesn't hold weight. Some of these people voted for him, a large number, because of that economic populism. And it is stunning now that you listen to Bernie Sanders and when you watch Donald Trump at the White House today, how much Hillary Clinton just lost that message, even despite the lesson that she should have learned from this primary with Bernie Sanders.
David Chalian, Donald Trump is now back in New York City, but he had quite an amazing day here in Washington today. First, he showed up behind us in the Oval Office. Look at that picture. Who would have thought we would have seen that? The President of the United States welcoming the President-elect of the United States. They're sitting there where world leaders come, and it was a pretty amazing moment when you think about what really went on during those 90 minutes and and the descriptions both gave. The president said it was excellent, and Donald Trump was effusive in his praise for the president.
He said he respected him. He said he's a good man. Not usually the words we've been hearing from Donald Trump about Barack Obama, and not at all how Barack Obama conducted himself on this campaign trail with regard to Donald Trump. But this speaks to the last 36, 40 hours since Donald Trump won, since he gave the speech that hit the right notes in New York on election night, talking about wanting to be the president for everyone. Barack Obama, the Rose Garden yesterday, and looking at these images today, everyone is sort of sticking to script here, which I think gets to how critical it is. And I think Donald Trump, today, my big takeaway was he clearly gets how critical it is that the country come together and heal after the election in some way if he is to be successful at getting his presidency started. And I think that's why you saw quite a bit of humility, I thought, today in the halls of the Capitol and in the Oval Office from Donald Trump.
We certainly did. I'm curious, Jeffrey, your reaction.
Well, I am the skunk at the garden party here, as I have been since
That's
election
why I was
day.
curious about your reaction.
And the same day we heard that he's considering for his chief of staff Steve Bannon, who came from Breitbart. Do you think someone who came from Breitbart is going to lead an administration
He was the CEO of the campaign.
Exactly. And look at how he campaigned. He campaigned as Donald Trump.
He got him elected president.
Exactly. By being an aggressive, controversial, outspoken, often angry person. Also, can we say Donald Trump is 70 years old? Do you think his personality is going to change now? I mean, I think Donald Trump is who he is. He's been a fantastic success as Donald Trump, and he's not going to stop being Donald Trump.
But also remember, Steve Bannon's Breitbart is the one that's been working to peel the skin off of Paul Ryan as part of their core mission over at Breitbart for quite a long time. And assuming that Paul Ryan stays on as Speaker of the House, this is someone Donald Trump is going to have to work with, going to want to work with, to get a legislative agenda done, to prove that he is an effective president, to prove that it means something to have a president in the White House that is a Republican and also a Republican control of Congress, and that when you have all of those things, you can push forward an agenda. And so that, to me, is a little perplexing to see a Steve Bannon.
You know, Mark, what was significant to me, and I don't know if it really is going to play out, when the president-elect was in the Oval Office, the President Obama's chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, he took a tour. He took a walk around the south lawn of the White House. So here you see a picture. And who was he walking with? Who did he invite for that little walk? The White House chief of staff invited Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who's been very involved in the campaign. Donald Trump loves him, very close relationship, played a significant role. And all of a sudden, who is walking with the White House chief of staff? Jared Kushner,
who in some ways was Donald Trump's chief of staff, an trusted person that he could turn to throughout the entire campaign, not just the Bannon who came in at the end, or the Corey Lewandowski at the beginning, or the Paul Manafort in the middle. It's those meetings right there that really matter. The symbolism of the pictures we saw today, I think, was important for this nation, as we're hearing what we think is probably a protest right now outside the White House that is rather loud. But the symbolism around the world that we had the president-elect and the president who do not like each other sitting there and talking about a peaceful transition of power was extremely important and extremely effective. But it's these meetings right here that is what makes Washington work.
There was also indications today that the president-elect wants to start off, at least in some areas like jobs, infrastructure, where he can find some bipartisan cooperation. If he starts along those lines, he might start off on a good foot.
Absolutely. It would be a show of good faith. And certainly Donald Trump is not this ideologue. He's not a traditional Republican in many senses even. And that was something that really bothered Republicans during the primary process. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him extend an olive branch, or, as to put it in Donald Trump terms, try to make a deal. This is something that's been a major part of his brand. And actually, I was talking to Congressman Pete King about this at Donald Trump's victory party on Tuesday night. And he said infrastructure would be a great start, just because it would be a bipartisan effort, something that could bring everyone together at a time when the country is so divided.
I'm going to show a chart, and you focused in on this chart, Rebecca, that shows non-college educated whites who voted for Trump. They clearly see there's some good job numbers for educated people, for people with college degrees, but there's a lot of people who really haven't seen their jobs increase, their pay increase. They clearly heard the message of Donald Trump.
Oh, absolutely. I think this chart really tells the story of the 2016 election, and it's something that, frankly, we all maybe missed leading up to this election. I know I talked about the recovery in terms of just blanket job numbers, but I wasn't really looking at this divide between people with bachelor's degrees or higher recovering with millions of jobs being gained, but in the working class, people with high school diplomas, there was no recovery for these people, and that's exactly why Donald Trump was a successful.
Jeffrey, you heard Bernie Sanders say if he wants to help working class folks out there create infrastructure, airports, schools, Donald Trump often talked about that. Bernie Sanders often talked about you can find some bipartisanship.
You can. I mean, the interesting complexity there is that it's the Democrats and even President Obama who have been calling for infrastructure change. The opponent has been Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. So that's the question, is the Republican leadership on board with infrastructure? Because they passed a highway bill last year. And McConnell says, why do we need to do infrastructure? We just did it. So that's something to think about.
But if there's a Republican president in the White House now, maybe McConnell, maybe Paul Ryan. Sarah, you've covered Donald Trump from day one of his campaign. Maybe they'll listen to him.
Well, and this is why you can't just assume that all the coalitions are going to line up when you go to Congress the way that we've seen them line up in the past. Sure, it's possible that Republicans will say Donald Trump is the president, and frankly, Donald Trump is the reason that a lot of us were reelected and have these majorities now, and so maybe we'll do these things because he wants to do them. But one of the realities that Donald Trump will run up against in Congress that he did not run up against on the campaign trail is what these policies are going to do to the budget. And the reality is the things he wants to do, across the board tax cuts, infrastructure spending, those are going to blow a hole in the budget, and that's going to be a problem for Republicans on the Hill. And the trade policies that he wants to pass, while they appear to be very beneficial to his core supporters as part of the reason they elected him, that's going to be another problem for Republican congressmen on the Hill. So you might see a Donald Trump president who has Republican majorities in both the Senate and in the House, but is relying on Democrats to get some of these initiatives done.
Everybody stay put. There's much more happening. We're following all the breaking news. And a post-election surprise. Russian officials now confirm the Kremlin was in what they call regular contact with the Trump team during the presidential campaign. So what are Trump's people saying about that? As President-elect Donald Trump meets with President Obama and with the Republican congressional leaders, have Trump's aides already been in touch with Russia? CNN Chief National Security Correspondent Jim Sciutto is joining us. Jim, there were toasts to Trump's election victory in the Kremlin. Has the groundwork already been laid for a new relationship?
Well, the Trump campaign is denying these contacts, but Russian officials are saying that they did happen during the campaign. To be fair, State Department said today that these kinds of contacts, not unusual for both nominees to reach out to key nations in advance of election. That said, and it is fair to say that this is somewhat different since Trump often went very far outside the lines of U.S. policy on Russia and had advisors with unusually close ties to Russia as well. Now today, Russia giving more details of those contacts with the campaign.
During a campaign in which Donald Trump often praised Russia and its president.
Wouldn't it be nice if we actually did get along with Russia?
Today, Russian officials said the Kremlin had been in regular contact with the Trump team. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybakov telling Russian media, quote, "Obviously, we know most of the people from his entourage. Quite a few have been staying in touch with Russian representatives." The Russian Foreign Ministry said Russia's goal was better relations with the U.S.
During this entire period, we not only sent some signals through some representatives or private messages, it was our clear position that we are ready for cooperation and working together and establishing normal relations.
Trump spokesperson Hope Hicks said the Russian account is, quote, not accurate. Some Trump advisors did make public appearances in Russia during the campaign, including possible cabinet appointee, retired U.S. General Michael Flynn, who sat right next to President Putin at a Russian media gala last December, though before he took on a formal campaign role. And throughout the campaign, Trump spoke of better relations with Russia and openly questioned the U.S. intel community's assessment that Russia was behind cyber attacks targeting the U.S. election.
They always blame Russia, and the reason they blame Russia because they think they're trying to tarnish me with Russia.
Now, however, his intelligence briefings will include the same level of classified intelligence that led the White House to name and shame Russia for the cyber hacks.
As he starts receiving briefings from
the national security agencies. There's going to have to be a greater understanding of the Russia challenge.
That challenge includes Russian support for the Assad regime in Syria, continued Russian military activity in Ukraine, NATO allies worried about Russian aggression in Europe, and threatening Russian military activity near U.S. ships and aircraft.
A source with the Russian government tells CNN that it also contacted the Clinton campaign, which sent a team to Moscow for high-level meetings. This, according to that Russian source reached by CNN. The Clinton campaign declined to comment. But, Wolf, again, State Department says it is normal for both campaigns to reach out, particularly with key nations like Russia. But, of course, the difference here is, and this is a big question mark under a Donald Trump administration, he's expressed big differences with U.S. policy on Russia. Will he follow through with those differences as president?
Jim Sciutto, good report. Thank you very much. Coming up, the White House transition begins as President-elect Donald Trump sits down with President Obama in the Oval Office, and they pledge to cooperate for the benefit of the country. Happening now, breaking news.
I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump.
Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you.
The handshake. President-elect Trump meets with President Obama in the Oval Office. The two men sending a message of civility and unity to a divided nation and an anxious world. What did they say when the cameras were not rolling? The handoff. Trump gets the lay of the land up on Capitol Hill, setting the stage to try to push his agenda through Congress. We'll take you inside his talks with the Republican leaders who haven't always seen eye to eye with their new standard bearer. Fear and loathing. Opponents of Donald Trump take to the streets in multiple cities. They're venting their anger about the outcome of the election and their worries that Trump will trample on their rights. And from rancor to respect, the current and future presidents have said lots of ugly things about one another. We'll take a closer look at their sudden transition from political sparring partners to peacemakers. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news tonight, Donald Trump in the Oval Office getting his first taste of the power and the responsibility he's now taking on only 71 days from now. The president-elect meeting face-to-face with President Obama for the first time ever. The bitter political opponents setting aside their animosity in a scene that would have been hard to imagine just 2 days ago. Mr. Trump also visited Capitol Hill, getting a bird's-eye view of the stage where he will be sworn in as president, with the House Speaker Paul Ryan as his tour guide. Trump discussing the legislative priorities with the Republican leaders. With no firm guarantees the GOP majority in Congress will pass some of his more controversial proposals. As Washington moves forward with a peaceful transition, a very different mood on the streets of some 25 cities overnight. Thousands of Americans turning out to demonstrate their outrage over Trump's election. The promise of more protests, a vivid reminder of the challenge the new president will face if he hopes to bring the country together. I'll talk about the transition and Trump's agenda with Republican Senator Jeff Flake and the president and CEO of the NAACP, Cornell William Brooks. They're standing by along with our correspondents and analysts as we cover the day's top stories. Up first, let's go to our senior White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, so far in this transition, the Trump and Obama camps seem to be sticking to their scripts.
So far, Wolf, that's right. White House officials here tell me that their views have not changed on Donald Trump, but senior administration officials from the president on down are devoting their final weeks in office to ensuring this smooth transition of power to the incoming Trump administration. And that was very much the spirit in the air here at the White House as the president and the president-elect came face to face. It was an image designed to calm a nervous world. The president and the president-elect, fresh off the political battlefield, sitting together in the Oval Office, calling on a divided nation to come together.
And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
Following his 90-minute meeting with President Obama, Donald Trump offered his own display of restraint and respect.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
And as reporters were ushered out of the room, Trump added one more compliment for the president.
Very good man.
And even got a little advice from the president.
Here's a good rule. Don't answer the questions when they just start.
It's always the last one.
Away from the news cameras, First Lady Michelle Obama and soon-to-be First Lady Melania Trump met in private as two key transition figures, White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough and Trump's son-in-law and top aide Jared Kushner, went for a long stroll on the South Lawn. It was all a far cry from the down-and-dirty campaign that just wrapped up earlier this week.
If his closest advisors don't trust him to tweet, why would any of us trust him with the nuclear codes?
Mr. Obama argued Trump was unfit for the White House only weeks after the GOP nominee finally conceded the president was an American citizen.
President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
Their last encounter face-to-face came when the president mocked the idea of a Trump administration 5 years ago.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
Oh, you guys are right there. The president-elect also stopped by the Capitol, where House Speaker Paul Ryan gave him the view from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, where he also met Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to start plotting the GOP agenda. Trump's stunning rise to power has sent shockwaves around the world, sparking protests in cities across the U.S.
Not my president, not today!
Top Trump advisors like New Jersey Governor Chris Christie are trying to lower the temperature, suggesting the new president will not seek to imprison Hillary Clinton, as he suggested during the campaign.
Politics are over now. People have spoken. Time to move to uniting the country.
Though Rudy Giuliani made it clear Trump is determined to carry out his plans, including that wall on the Mexican border.
The wall is going to take a while. I'm sure he's going to build it. It's a campaign promise.
And another sign that this is a transition work in progress, Vice President Joe Biden met with the Vice President-elect Mike Pence earlier this afternoon. But Wolf, it seems that the incoming Trump administration is going to have to get accustomed to some norms that are in place here in Washington. Donald Trump, we're told by an aide, left Washington earlier this afternoon, got on his plane, returned to New York City without any reporters being told that the president-elect was leaving Washington. He arrived at LaGuardia earlier this evening and then presumably went back to Trump Tower. Wolf, as you know, that is sort of outside the norms of what we expect when we cover a president-elect. It is expected that a pool of reporters is kept abreast of his movements at all times. That did not occur in this case, Wolf. Donald Trump simply left the city without anybody in the media even knowing about it. Wolf?
Yeah, that's unacceptable. They got to fix that. As a former White House correspondent, it is truly unacceptable. The president-elect and the president, a pool of reporters, should be with them on a trip like that. All right, thanks very much, Jim Acosta, for that report. One final question before I let you go. Jim, we're also getting our first glimpse of Hillary Clinton since her concession speech. What are you learning about that?
That's right, Wolf. It's kind of an amazing thing. A woman ran into Hillary Clinton apparently going for a walk in the woods today and took this picture. You can see it up on screen there, posted it on her Facebook page. Her friend posted this picture of her friend on her Facebook page showing Hillary Clinton there going for a walk in the woods. As you said, it is the first image we're seeing of the former Secretary of State and former Democratic nominee going in front of a camera since her concession speech earlier this week. And Wolf, it's just sort of a remarkable turn of events. One person gets to come to the White House and meet with the president. Another goes for a walk in the woods. Wolf?
Yeah, she's walking her dog in Chappaqua, near her home there. Obviously, a remarkable contrast. Her opponent, Donald Trump, meeting in the Oval Office with the President of the United States. She's walking her dog, meets some person there, and grabs a picture. That's really remarkable when you
That's
think
the way it
about all
goes.
the history and the drama unfolding over these past few days. Jim Acosta, thanks for that report. Let's dig a little bit deeper now into President-elect Trump's discussions with the Republican congressional leadership. Our senior political reporter, Manu Raju, is joining us from up on Capitol Hill. So, Manu, did they get into specifics about Mr. Trump's legislative agenda?
They did, Wolf. This was a meeting all intended to showcase unity between the Republican nominee and the Republican leadership, which we have not really seen a lot of in this election cycle. But both sides wanted to show that they're going to be on the same page legislatively when Donald Trump takes office next year. They talked about several key big-ticket items. They talked about immigration, health care, the economy, and also the Supreme Court came up as well in the meeting with Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. Now, after that meeting with Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump walked through the halls of the Senate, and he was asked about his meeting. Here's what he had to say.
What are the top three?
We have a lot. We're very strong in immigration. We're very strong in healthcare. We're looking at jobs, big league jobs.
Now, he cut short that gaggle, Wolf, after he was asked a question about whether or not he would ask Congress to approve his ban on Muslims. And then he didn't answer that question. He said, thank you, and then he walked away. And on immigration, it's unclear exactly what he means by that, whether or not he's going to push for that border wall with Mexico that he campaigned on so aggressively on the campaign trail. I can tell you both Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell in the past have expressed reservations about that. In fact, yesterday at a press conference, Wolf, I asked Mitch McConnell 3 times about whether he supports that wall with Mexico, and he just would not answer the question, Wolf.
And very quickly, that image, we saw them on the balcony of the Speaker's office up on Capitol Hill. A powerful picture when they walked outside and looked at the mall in Washington. You've stood up there. I have too. It really is an amazing sight.
It really is an amazing sight, and it was an effort by Paul Ryan to show that we're on the same page. We're on the same team. We're going to work very closely together. Remember, this was a very divisive campaign within the Republican Party. At one point, Paul Ryan had said that he was no longer going to defend or campaign with Donald Trump. That was after that release of that Access Hollywood video. But in recent weeks, he's changed his tune. He's talked more openly about Donald Trump. And today, a real effort to showcase unity between the Republican president, soon-to-be president, and the Republican speaker, because that partnership is going to be critical to getting things enacted for the Republican Party in the next 4 years, Wolf.
It certainly will be. All right, Manu, thanks very much. Manu Raju up on Capitol Hill. Let's talk a little bit with a Republican senator who was a very vocal critic of Donald Trump during the campaign. We're talking about Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, who's joining us live. Senator, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So you were a pretty vocal opponent of Donald Trump's. You even went as far as to tell your fellow Republicans to distance themselves from him. But after his win, you tweeted this, and I'll put it up on the screen. You tweeted, congrats to President-elect Trump on a big win and a gracious and healing speech. I look forward to working with him. Now back to eating crow. What do you think? Do you think Trump really wants to work with you? Have you spoken to him or anyone on his team?
I've not spoken to him yet, but the speech that he gave was encouraging right after he won. I thought it was a gracious and healing speech. And if he governs that way, I think it'll be good for the country and good for all of us.
The Senate Majority Leader, your leader, Mitch McConnell, said it's always a mistake to misread your mandate and wouldn't say if he was with Trump on supporting, for example, funding a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Trump tweeted this about you in September. This past September. The Republican Party needs strong and committed leaders, not weak people such as Jeff Flake. It is going to stop illegal immigration. So assuming Mexico doesn't pay for the wall, would you vote in favor of building a wall with Mexico?
Well, the bill that we passed out of the Senate, the so-called Gang of Eight bill, had funding for 750 miles of fencing, barriers, in some places walls, in some places virtual fencing, surveillance, and infrastructure. So we've already done that. It is not going to be the type of wall that some envision that goes for 2,500 miles. But we obviously need better border security. I just think we need other things as well. Interior enforcement, a mechanism to deal with those who are here illegally, and a guest worker plan moving ahead. So we'll fight for those things as well.
Yeah, that Gang of Eight you were talking about, comprehensive immigration reform. You had Republicans, you had Democrats. In the end, it died. Let's talk about your state, Arizona. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, the premiums could skyrocket in your state, Arizona, 116% next year. Right. Do you support Donald Trump's repeated statements he will repeal and replace Obamacare? And if so, what would happen to the more than 200,000 people in Arizona who are already insured thanks to Obamacare, especially what happens to those who do have pre-existing conditions?
Right. Well, a lot of them are covered simply by expanding Medicaid. But we do have to find a way to ensure that those with pre-existing conditions can find affordable care. But Obamacare in Arizona has been a disaster. We hear horror stories every day about increased premiums, massive co-pays and deductibles that make it completely unaffordable. And you're right. I mean, they're talking about 116% increases in some areas, depending on the county and the provider. We have 15 counties in Arizona. 14 of them have only one provider. So there's no choice. And it's just simply unaffordable. So we've got to move ahead with this.
So you are in favor of repealing and replacing Obamacare?
You bet. Yes, I've been since the beginning. Obviously, we've got to find a way to deal with those with pre-existing conditions, make sure that they can find affordable care. But we've got to make sure that people can afford their coverage. And right now, it is unaffordable in Arizona.
How do you do that? Do you have a specific plan to replace it with something better, or is it just a plan that needs a lot of consideration?
Well, there are a number of plans that have been put forward on the Republican side that have various elements. I assume that what we go with will be a combination of it. But in the coming 2 months, certainly we're going to be fleshing those plans out and making sure that as soon as we repeal, we have a plan to do what we need to do going forward. Obviously, there's a sunset period already in some of the regulations there, and we can deal with that. But we've got to get rid of this onerous burden on businesses and individuals without the care that people deserve and expect on the other side. It's completely and utterly unaffordable now.
Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona. We're going to get another view of the Trump victory and his transition to power from the president and CEO of the NAACP, Cornell William Brooks. I want to get your reaction to the Trump victory. Cornell, there's a lot to discuss. We ought to take a quick break.
Sure.
We'll start our conversation right after this.
Okay.
We're following the breaking news. Take a look at this. These are live pictures of protesters blocking a bridge near Philadelphia's Amtrak train station, 30th Street Station over there in Philadelphia. This is the second day of protest, by the way, in Philadelphia. There's a smaller protest underway in Los Angeles right now, other protests in several other cities across the country. We'll update you on all of that. We're also following the breaking news on President-elect Trump's meeting with President Obama today over at the White House right behind me. We're back with the President and the CEO of the NAACP, Cornell William Brooks. Cornell, once again, thanks for joining us. I'm curious, what was your reaction to Donald Trump's win?
I think, like a great many Americans, given all of the predictions, I was surprised and concerned, alarmed. The reason being is that the country has survived a presidential campaign in which we have seen literally misogyny mainstreamed, anti-Semitism normalized, racism regularized, if you will. Folks in inner cities and rural communities pitted against one another. So it was surprising, very surprising. But that being said, we have to prepare for a peaceful transition from the days of George Washington to the election and re-election of the nation's first African-American president. We've enjoyed peaceful transitions. That being said, I would note this. the president-elect was elected without the popular vote, likely with suppressed votes. In the first presidential election in 50 years without the full protection of the Voting Rights Act. He is in a position now, if he's to be called our president, he has to understand that our president means that our implies that he's accountable to the whole of the country. Immigrant Americans, Muslim Americans, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, and certainly the largest slice of the citizenry, namely women. And that suggests that he has to speak in ways that bring the country together.
He says he wants to be the president of all Americans. He's been saying all the things he should be saying since he won, since he defeated Hillary Clinton. What was your reaction when you saw the exchange? He met with 90 minutes with President Obama in the Oval Office today, and they both were very complimentary, and they emerged, the president saying it was an excellent meeting.
Well, let's put it this way. It is said that you campaign in poetry and govern in prose, but we've seen a campaign that's represented obscenity, so we can only hope that we're going to turn that into prose. And what that means is specific policies that bring the country together. Here's what we've seen. In this campaign, it's not been merely about offensive rhetoric, but also offensive policy. So rhetoric that otherizes and ostracizes and demeans Muslims, and an immigration policy that suggests an entire religion being banned from the country. It's not just that he's spoken about the African American community as the African Americans, but he has also put forward a policy under a philosophy of law and order that has been held to be unconstitutional, namely stop and frisk. And so this represents not just a shift in rhetoric or a shift in the optics, i.e. meeting with the president, but a shift in policy. So in other words, he has to speak in ways that bring people together, but policy specifics that bring the country together.
You know, it's curious because we looked at all the exit polling, and a lot of people around the country who voted for President Obama in 2008, who voted for President Obama to be reelected in 2012, they wound up voting for Donald Trump this time. And I wonder if you have an explanation for that.
But know this, the country wanted change, but change generally means change for the better. It does not mean change in terms of dividing, change in terms of pitting us one against another. I don't believe that the majority of Americans want to heed and obey racialized dog whistles that render some of us cowering and in fear, and others literally snarling in anger. And so he has an opportunity in terms of speaking to the economic anxieties of the country. His notion of a major investment in infrastructure, boosting high-paying jobs, focusing jobs on undercapitalized communities where we see elevated levels of unemployment and underemployment. Focusing on those kinds of policies, I think, can be helpful.
He says he wants to reach out. He wants to help the working class. He wants to help African Americans. It's interesting. We also looked at the exit polls. African American turnout in some key states this time was lower than it was 4 years ago and 8 years ago. And I wonder if you have an explanation for that.
Well, let's note this. Across the board, across demographic slices of the citizenry, we saw lower turnout overall. So let's be very clear about this. So the results of this election can be attributable to the African American community. We can't blame African Americans. I think it's important to note here that during the course of this campaign, we've seen no less than 10 cases of voter suppression, where courts have attested held against voter suppression. And so we have a president-elect who was elected literally with 2 thumbs and 8 fingers on the scale in terms of suppressed votes in communities all across the country. African Americans, Latinos, rural voters. Think about it. Within days of this election, we had 4,000 voter registrations purged in North Carolina, a state held to have engaged in intentional racial discrimination with respect to the vote. So this is a moment where I believe this president is entering the Oval Office with this election under a cloud. Voter suppression did not begin with him, But it's certainly.
But do you think he got more electoral college votes than Hillary Clinton did? Was it a free and fair election?
It's absolutely not a free and fair election. Not where you have court after court after court literally catching vote suppressors red-handed. And so it wasn't a free and fair election. Donald J. Trump is our president. He is the president-elect. The election system that delivered him to the White House, however, is broken and needs to be fixed, and that means fixing the Voting Rights Act.
So are you suggesting the system was rigged?
Absolutely not. I'm not suggesting that the system was rigged. What I am suggesting, in fact, is we had those in state legislatures all across the country who have engaged in voter suppression. We have court after court, the Fourth Circuit, the Fifth Circuit, that have attested to this. And so the point being here is not so much that the system is rigged, it's that the Voting Rights Act is broken, clearly.
So you obviously want that to be fixed. What do you say to those people out there who right now, and you're a civil rights leader, who feel that they have been betrayed to a certain degree, and they're disappointed and they're angry right now in seeing, for example, a picture of the President of the United States welcoming the President-elect of the United States. There's a lot of anger out there right now. We're looking at some protests in Philadelphia, for example. How worried are you, for example, that their civil rights potentially could be violated?
I'm very concerned. The NAACP is not in the business of hand-wringing worry, but we are in the business of focusing our concerns. And so when we look at these demonstrators and protesters across the country, they have a right to be concerned. But even as we are concerned, even as many of us are angry, we have to be focused, we have to be determined, and we have to put forward a strong civil rights agenda and demand that this administration adhere to it. We have been very clear. We are willing to stand with this administration, stand at its side, but we are willing to also stand in its face if it violates the civil rights of Americans. And that means with respect to immigration reform, that means with respect to policing, voting rights. We as a country have to come together. We are bigger and better than the presidential campaign that we just survived.
One final question, Cornell. I know you invited Donald Trump as a presidential candidate to come to your convention, the NAACP convention, this past summer. He declined the invitation. Is this a moment for you to reach out to him, for him to respond, for the two of you to get together with other civil rights leaders and talk about these issues?
Absolutely.
You're ready for that moment.
We are ready, certainly, to talk to the president-elect. But the question is, we need a conversation and a dialogue that's robust and honest, and that recognizes how deeply divided the country is, how badly broken the Voting Rights Act is, and how wrong-headed some of his policies that he's called for in terms of stop and frisk are. That kind of honest, frank conversation is certainly necessary. But we ask that the president-elect certainly come to the table really recognizing the state of the country. Look over our shoulder. The folks behind us, those protesters, those demonstrators, they represent the whole of the country, and they're part of the country.
So you're going to reach out to the president-elect?
Absolutely.
Okay. Cornell.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us, Cornell William Brooks, the president and CEO of the NAACP. Just ahead, after years of antagonizing each other from afar, President Obama and Donald Trump, they go face-to-face in a remarkable meeting in the White House.
We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer.
The breaking news this hour, a meeting almost unthinkable just a few days ago. The president-elect Donald Trump together in the Oval Office for a 90-minute meeting with the President of the United States, a meeting that was both cordial and conciliatory. The two men meeting for the first time to discuss Donald Trump's transition to power.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. I have been very encouraged by the I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. And I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together to deal with the many challenges that we face. And in the meantime, Michelle has had a chance to greet the incoming First Lady, and we had an excellent conversation with her as well, and we want to make sure that they feel welcome as they prepare to make this transition. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Ms. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the President in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going to be taking any questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Here's a good rule. Don't answer any questions when they just start.
It's always the last one.
Come on, guys. Yeah, come on, guys. Let's go. Very good man. Thank you, guys.
He's a very good man, we heard Donald Trump saying about the president at the very end right there. Let's get some more with our panel. First, David Axelrod. David, you're a former senior advisor to President Obama. How do you think he approached this important meeting?
I think, as he said yesterday, Wolf, he had very much in mind his own meeting with George W. Bush in 2008. Remember, the president was pretty tough on President Bush during his campaign, and yet President Bush welcomed him to the White House, held a luncheon with all the former presidents at the President-elect Obama's request. All of his aides briefed all of us, and there was an ongoing dialogue throughout the transition months, and he was determined, I know, to do the same thing for whomever was elected. And in some ways, he felt that it was even more important when someone of an opposing party was elected, because this is what is the responsibility of a president in our democratic system.
Certainly is. Gloria, considering their history over these past, not just few months of the campaign, over the past several years, the two of them seemed pretty warm, almost cordial. I don't know about friendly, but they seemed very, very polite.
Well, I think they were polite to each other because they're doing that not because they necessarily love each other, but because they're doing it for the country they love. And this is what an orderly transition of power looks like. And so they don't have to be best friends, but they are now members of a very elite club. And there are not so many of them around. And so I think that one president, an outgoing president, treats a president-elect with respect because he has earned the job by getting a majority of the Electoral College, 270 in the Electoral College. And that is something to respect and admire. And I think that what this president was doing was saying, here's what your day is like. Here's what it is. What stunned me, by the way, was that Donald Trump said that the president explained to him some of the really great things that have been achieved. I'm kind of wondering what exactly President Obama was talking about. Was it some of his policies that he had achieved? Or was it something about job growth or unemployment going down? I mean, I'm interested in finding out more about that
what Donald Trump was referring to.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, David Swerdlick, as a lot of us remember, everybody remembers, Donald Trump was one of the activists in the so-called birther movement, and yet to see this meeting in the White House, it's pretty incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, in some ways it is incredible. In some ways, though, I feel like this was the only way it could happen. In 2011, when Trump emerged at the leadership of the birther movement, if he had, as he had sort of flirted with at that time, run against President Obama, I actually think he would have been eviscerated. President Obama, at least up to this point, has superior political skills. So this was the moment when they didn't run against each other that, you know, each was able to be magnanimous. And I think one thing you can say for sure about President Obama is whatever other criticisms people may have, he's never had trouble sort of brushing off personal insult. And I think that's how you get
Jim Acosta, you think there are going to be some more meetings between these two men?
You know, I think it's possible. I was talking to a senior White House official earlier today who I asked this person about this notion that Donald Trump would seek President Obama's counsel in the future. This official described it to me as unbelievable that would happen. You know, yes, they were cordial. Yes, they were polite. Yes, they were part of this elite group. But these are two men that don't like each other very much. I mean, let's just be honest about it. And there are people inside this White House right now who are traumatized. They are sickened that Donald Trump is going to be president of the United States. I mean, that is just the reality of it. But they are very determined to carry out this process of a smooth transition. And it was interesting to hear Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, earlier today. You ask him about anything. Well, what about these insults in the past? Well, we're committed to a smooth transition. Well, what about the birther stuff? We're committed to a smooth transition. That is everything at the White House right now. That's all they're talking about.
They don't like each other very much, but I was actually surprised to hear Trump say today that they'd never met.
Yeah.
Actually met face to face before this today. For two men who are larger than life figures, for two men who have been so in each other's lives, in their public lives, that they've actually never met face to face, it is kind of stunning. But I think that, Gloria, to your point about them being a part of a small club now, you know, this is a very different kind of tension than we, even as David Axelrod was talking about the fact that President Obama ran against George W. Bush, even though John McCain was on the ticket, and so it was not an easy meeting between the two of them. But look at in the past, maybe I'm being really optimistic here. Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, they're really close.
Yeah.
You know, again, they're their own. They have their own issues, and they've had a lot of time for healing, but they genuinely are good
They've become close
friends.
as ex-presidents, not necessarily while one of them was
exactly
president.
now. Exactly.
But if Donald Trump is successful in undoing everything President Obama spent the last 8 years doing,
I totally agree.
I think they might communicate a little bit less.
I totally agree.
David, where do you think Donald Trump and Paul Ryan will find some common ground? Because, you know, the speaker and the presidential candidate, they had their differences, and they were very public.
The differences, I think, is mild. Paul Ryan essentially accused him of making racist statements, sexist statements, said he wouldn't campaign for him. But that was then. This is now. They do have significant policy differences. Paul Ryan is pro-trade. He's been warm to immigration reform. He feels strongly about entitlement reforms that Donald Trump says he won't implement. But there are other issues. Certainly they agree on Obamacare and on some fiscal issues, perhaps some tax issues. There are things on deregulation. So on the traditional kinds of Republican issues, they can find some common ground, and I suspect that's where they'll begin working together.
You know, Gloria, a couple names already have emerged as a potential White House chief of staff. Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, who worked closely with Donald Trump during the campaign. Also, Steve Bannon, the CEO from the campaign, a former chief of Breitbart News. And there's been a lot of reaction to these names. White House chief of staff, all of us who have covered the White House, we know that is a critically important job.
Reince Priebus would be the more establishment choice, the person who could be a go-between between Paul Ryan, for example, and the White House. Steve Bannon would be the ideological choice. And I mean, I remember it wasn't that long ago where Donald Trump was teetering between choosing Newt Gingrich as his vice presidential nominee and Mike Pence. And if you'll recall, his family kind of had to do an intervention at the time and say, no, you're not going to pick Newt Gingrich, you're going to pick Mike Pence. And he ended up going with Pence, and he did not regret it.
No, he didn't.
So I wonder if that's going on
that
this
choice
time,
would be
right?
significant to see which direction the president-elect wants to go.
It's funny you said that, Gloria, because somebody said to me today, remember, if Donald Trump's plane didn't break down, Mike Pence might not be the vice president.
Or they didn't
vice
tell him it broke
elect.
down.
Right, or whatever it is that happened, meaning that there was a little bit of a bait and switch or an intervention, however you put it. Because right now, I'm told that Donald Trump himself really wants Steve Bannon to be his chief of staff. He trusts him. He has just a good bond with him. He also very much likes Reince Priebus, the RNC chair, and they've grown to be close. Priebus has traveled with him a lot. I'm told that there's some people in the family and others who are trying to dissuade Donald Trump from picking Bannon because of the Breitbart, because of the fact that the chief of staff, the role is the critical part of the role is to keep the trains running on time, and that maybe personality-wise, Reince Priebus
But Jim
is better
Acosta,
for that than
we
Bannon.
did see Dennis McDonough, the current White House chief of staff, take a little walk around the south lawn of the White House with Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law of Donald Trump,
That's right.
Ivanka's husband.
And I think that's an indication that that Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump, husband of Ivanka, will be a player in this administration. Perhaps not the chief of staff, but play an important role. And we've seen this during the course of the campaign, that family matters to Donald Trump. And he does listen to Ivanka, listens to Jared Kushner. I've heard Kellyanne Conway also mentioned in the conversation about White House chief of staff. I think that would be interesting in terms of Donald Trump's problems with women during this election process. Having a woman chief of staff might send a pretty powerful message across the country.
And we should get that word of that fairly soon. That's always one of the early appointments during a transition. Everybody stand by. Just ahead, the long history of antagonism between President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. Will today's remarkable White House meeting wash away years of bad blood? More now on the breaking news. The extraordinary meeting between President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump at the White House today, all the more remarkable given their contentious relationship. Seeing as Brian Todd has more. Brian, there are some years of bad blood between the president and the president-elect.
Some very bitter years, Wolf. President-elect Trump said he and President Obama had never met in person before Trump came to the White House today. Extraordinary considering how nasty and intensely personal the back and forth has been between the two men for at least 5 years. A contempt that made their public show of warmth today seem just bizarre. Civility, but barely a smile at the White House.
We now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect.
An extraordinary show of cordiality, considering that less than 72 hours earlier, President Obama painted Donald Trump as being unhinged.
Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be commander-in-chief. If your closest advisors don't trust you to tweet, how can you trust them with the nuclear codes?
That was the night before the entire political landscape was altered. In the heat of the campaign, Trump has taken his own personal shots.
Barack Obama, number one, is incompetent.
He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS.
The barbs seemingly never let up. Trump tweeting in early August, President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States. It drew this response from the president on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Well, at real Donald Trump, at least I will go down as a president.
The intensely personal vitriol between Obama and Trump extends back at least 5 years, when Trump led the charge of the birther movement, questioning whether the president was born in the U.S.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate?
After President Obama finally produced a long-form birth certificate, he used it as ammunition for some acid-laced one-liners about Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner a few weeks later.
So he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?
Just a few feet away, Trump simply stared, unsmiling. Some have suggested it was this moment that spurred Donald Trump to run for president. For his part, observers say President Obama has been more than irritated with that whole experience.
I think it wounded him. I think it really enraged his wife, and she's mentioned that before in public. In fact, she did so on the campaign trail in the final weeks of this race. You can be sure that that was on President Obama's mind. It was probably on President-elect Trump's mind when they were talking there.
Now, there's at least one more potentially awkward meeting to come, and that's, of course, on Inauguration Day. Political observers say President Obama will likely find it difficult as he stands at that podium with President Trump, passing the baton to a man who ran against everything he stood for during a very divisive and often bitter campaign. That is not the kind of experience that analysts say gets erased very quickly. Wolf.
What an extraordinary day indeed, especially given that history. Brian, thank you very much. I want to go back to our senior political commentator, David Axelrod. Take us a little bit inside this exchange we saw. Your thoughts, David, because you worked so closely with President Obama during his campaign, after he was elected, during the transition. What was your reaction to what we just saw, given the history?
Well, look, there's no doubt that they've had very, very sharp differences. The president was irritated by the whole birther movement and Trump's role in it. He thought it was a foolish distraction. Finally produced the long-form birth certificate to put the thing to rest. It was actually, I think, the same week as that White House Correspondents' Dinner, and made good sport of Donald Trump at that dinner. But in this campaign, he's been deeply offended by some of the divisive things that Donald Trump has said, some of the language that Donald Trump has used, and he's been very clear about his feelings. But look, this is a guy who taught constitutional law. He has a very deep sense of what the exercise of the vote means, what this whole process of electing a president means, and what his responsibilities are as the president of the United States. And so he, I'm sure, took a deep breath and went out to discharge those responsibilities. Remember, he was one of the things that he attacked Donald Trump for was suggesting that he wouldn't accept the result of the election. Well, if you believe deeply in the sanctity of this process, then you have to set an example. I think Barack Obama set an example today.
You think they're going to meet again after this first initial 90-minute meeting? I know they're going to meet on January 20th of next year during the inauguration when Donald Trump is sworn in as the 45th president of the United States. But will they continue to have a dialogue during this transition process?
I think this is entirely at the discretion of the president-elect. If he wants a meeting, he'll certainly get one. If he wants to talk to the president, his calls will certainly be received. I don't think any President Bush did not force himself on President Obama, but when President Obama requested a meeting, President Bush gave him that meeting.
I think that will be very, very significant, this entire transition process. How it goes could shape this new incoming administration. Thanks very much, David Axelrod, for that. That's it for me. Thanks very much for watching. Aaron Burnett Out Front starts right now.
Out front next, President-elect Donald Trump gets ready to take over. His transition team in overdrive. Could RNC Chairman Reince Priebus be the next chief of staff? He's my guest tonight. Plus, the first sighting of Hillary Clinton since her concession speech on a hiking trail. Our guest, the woman who spotted her and talked to her about the election. And meet the next First Lady, Melania Trump. Is she just like us? Let's go out front. And good evening. I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news rallying around President-elect Donald Trump. CNN has just learned that former President Bill Clinton called President-elect Donald Trump this afternoon. An aide to President Clinton saying he congratulated Trump and wished him well. Also tonight, President-elect Trump arriving back in New York after his meeting with President Barack Obama at the White House. Today, for the first time ever, the two men came face-to-face, meeting in the Oval Office for 90 minutes, a meeting which was only scheduled to last 10 minutes. President Obama called it excellent. President-elect Trump said it was a great honor.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel.
At the same time, their wives, Michelle Obama and Melania Trump, met for tea, touring the White House. This is the picture we have of that meeting. And for the second straight day, the Trump bounce on Wall Street. The Dow surging to a record high closing. The Dow moving up as much as it has since an election is truly an unprecedented thing, and it runs completely counter to many of the prognostications that were out there before. Yet another record today after Donald Trump's win. Michelle Kaczynski is out front at the White House. And Michelle, the moment today of this meeting, so many people thought they would never see Barack Obama and Donald Trump meet, never mind as president and president-elect at the White House.
Maybe even not the two people who were in that meeting. And tonight outside the White House, we're hearing more protests, but inside today it was all about reassurance and everybody on their best behavior. And what's so fascinating about this is that on the one hand, you have this incredibly organized transition process with handshakes and good wishes on all sides. But then on the other, you have this intense bitterness from the campaign trail. And today, the White House really didn't hold back in saying that President Obama meant every word that he has said about Donald Trump, that he's unfit, that the president has deep concerns. Well, guess what? None of that has changed. But today was all about working together and moving forward despite those major differences.
A historic day for Donald Trump after a historic election, meeting with President Obama alone in the Oval Office that will soon be his.
We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces.
Donald Trump calling his fierce political rival a good man.
I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel.
When asked, though, the White House press secretary said all those warnings from President Obama on the campaign trail about Trump, that he's dangerous, unqualified, still hold.
Well, does the president now have any reason to believe that Donald Trump is fit to be president of the United States?
Again, I'm not going to, the two men did not relitigate their differences in the Oval Office.
Trump's next stop, Capitol Hill, meetings with leadership. The tone here equally welcoming, putting deep differences aside for now.
We're going to lower taxes, as you know. We're going to fix health care and make it more affordable and better. And we're going to do a real job for the public.
An impending rolling back of as many of President Obama's policies as possible. But the White House wouldn't talk about that today, saying essentially what will be. America has chosen.
My number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
Ending it all with a joking reminder from one leader to the next, not to take questions from the press.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going to be taking any questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Here's a good rule. Don't answer the questions when they just start. Very good man. Thank you, guys.
Well, the very uncomfortable elephant in the Oval Office was not only how these two people feel about each other, but also the fact that Donald Trump has vowed many times to roll back President Obama's policies. The White House, though, said what made this meeting excellent, as the president termed it, was that both are committed to the transition, and Donald Trump's tone reflected that. Aaron.
All right, Michelle, thank you very much. And we are also tonight learning that Trump will have a meeting tomorrow with the people who are going to make this happen in his transition. Dana Bash is in Washington tonight out front. And Dana, obviously the big question tonight, who will President-elect Trump appoint? I mean, we've got a CIA director and a chief of staff and a secretary of state. I mean, it's pretty incredible what he has to do here. And you have some new reporting tonight.
That's right, monumental, and it's got to be done in the next 70 days or so. The fast track, and this is what generally happens, is for the chief of staff, because that person, once in place, is going to help the transition team and the president-elect get everybody else in place. Right now, we are told that Donald Trump himself would prefer Steve Bannon, who was the chief operating officer of his campaign. He came from Breitbart, the conservative media site, and he has been very, very present with Donald Trump, especially in these last few weeks of the campaign, on the road with him, sort of trying to help keep him in check. I am told that despite the fact that Trump wants him, that some people in Trump's orbit are telling Trump that that is a terrible idea. First and foremost, because of the fact, as I mentioned, that he came from Breitbart, which sort of by definition is the outside conservative media site that throws torpedoes at Republican establishment. Now, Donald Trump is going to be the president of the United States, and he has to work with many of the Republicans who are running Congress to get legislation done. Breitbart has been going after, including the House Speaker. The other reason, I'm told, is because some people don't feel that he's the right person to make sure the trains are running on time, which is one of the key jobs of chief of staff. The other person you had on that screen, Reince Priebus, the current RNC chair, he has also been very, very integral in the Trump world. He not only and his team ran the ground operation that got Donald Trump elected, he has also been personally involved with the campaign, also traveling with Donald Trump. I'm told that their bond isn't necessarily as close, but certainly much closer than people think. And I'm also told by people around Washington, Aaron, that he would be kind of the consensus choice, somebody who knows Washington, who knows the Republicans on the Hill. He helped get many of them elected. So that's where things stand on that choice, the first and probably the most important choice because it's the most personal.
All right, Dana, thank you very much. And out front tonight, Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee. Reince, thanks so much for being with us tonight. I know you're doing this on very little sleep, if any. We're told you've spoken to Trump about a position in his administration. How did that conversation go?
No, that's not the case. I'm not involved in that. Nobody's talking about those things. And so our focus right now is just making sure we're wrapping up the committee work and then, making sure that the transition goes smoothly and so that he can be well equipped come January, and he will be.
Now, Donald Trump does give you a lot of credit for his win. At that moment, when the world was watching him give his victory speech, he talked about you. Here's what he said.
I'll tell you, Reince is really a star, and he is the hardest working guy.
We understand, and I know you're saying you haven't talked about it with him, but you're on the list. Steve Bannon is on the list for Trump's chief of staff. If offered, would you take that job? Do you even want it?
I don't want to even talk about it. I mean, the truth is, I'm in my job right now, Aaron. I mean, I'm the chairman of the RNC. It's an important role that we play at the National Party. You saw it in action on Tuesday night, and it was a great victory. But those great victories only happen with a great candidate. You can have, I'm proud of our mechanics and data, and I think it is unprecedented. I think it's unbelievable what this committee did. But none of those unbelievable things work if you have a bad candidate. So it always starts with a great candidate. And the other thing it starts with is that you have to have a candidate that's flowing with the river. In other words, the momentum, the mood of the electorate has to flow with the candidate. All those things lined up, which is why I think the media narrative was just so far off on what Americans were thinking about the choices they had in front of them.
President Obama and President-elect Trump were supposed to meet today for 10 minutes. As you know, that was the schedule. Were you surprised after all the, and let's just be honest here, frankly, horrible things that they have said about each other, that meeting lasted an hour and a half?
No, I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why. Because I've seen President-elect Trump in meetings, one-on-one, intense meetings, and meetings where things needed to be patched up or people needed to get to know each other. He didn't get to be where he's at. Even if you put aside the fact that he did something phenomenal, now he's President-elect of the United States, in his business dealings, I guarantee you there's all kinds of problems that he's dealt with. Blowout arguments over permits or building, whatever the case is, but he will walk into that meeting and people will leave the meeting and they will say, this is a gracious, personable guy. He's a hard guy not to like, especially in meetings like that.
Do you know
so I'm not surprised.
Do you know what they talked about? Have you had a chance to talk to Donald Trump about it?
I talked to him briefly today when he swung through the RNC, but obviously I wasn't downloading on details with him, but I'm sure it was very positive, and the reports are indicative of that.
You know, Bernie Sanders today talked about Donald Trump on CNN, Ryan. So I wanted to play for you part of what he said. Here he is.
Sure.
The election is over. Donald Trump won. I intend to work with President Trump. I will vigorously oppose him if he appeals to racism or sexism or some of the other discriminatory measures that he brought up during his campaign.
Ryan, you've seen the protests. They are out there again on the streets tonight protesting against Trump's presidency. Does he need to? Does he feel that he should reach out to these people explicitly and assuage their fears?
Well, Aaron, yesterday morning, keep in mind, Donald Trump spoke to the American people just yesterday morning. And when he was getting ready for that speech, it was nothing about bragging about the election, nothing about continuing the rhetoric, the political rhetoric that was indicative of a political campaign. It was all about coming together, leading all Americans, no matter background, race, ethnicity, whatever the gender, whatever the case is. And it was Donald Trump that led, and it was him that decided this is the direction to go. Let's bring people together. Let's cool the water.
So this is how he's going to be from now on.
That's what he did. It wasn't a speechwriter, Aaron, that said, oh, read this speech. And he says, okay, great, put it on the top. No, he sat down and made sure that it was the right speech at the right time. And it was just yesterday morning. Him sitting down for 90 minutes with the president is another indicator. People should look at that and say, here is a person that just won the presidency, and he's sitting down and having a 90-minute conversation, which should have been 10, with the president. He's working hard, and he's showing the country that we need to move together forward. But I would say the agenda that Americans were in favor of was an agenda that the Republican Party, meaning our candidates, including President-elect Trump, House and Senate candidates, put on the table. So the other part of this is we have an obligation then to pursue the promises that we made in a campaign that people voted for. They voted and said, yes, we want those things to be done in Washington. So those things will be done. We don't have a mandate to water down our promises. We have a mandate to perform the things that we promised.
So a wall,
banning
do. Muslim immigration from certain countries, those all fall under the category of promises he made that he will keep?
No, but that's not the promises. No, but that's not the position that he laid out. This has now been since June that he gave that speech, I believe, to either American Legion or the VFW. In June, he said his position is if a country is harboring terrorists and there are risks to the security of the United States, that he would take measures to temporarily suspend those immigration visas until a better vetting system is in place. That's consistent with many bills in the House and the Senate, and it's what Donald Trump's position is. And so if the media wants to go back now, not you particularly, Aaron, but if the media now wants to go back and stir the pot and now claim that he wants this Muslim ban when he's made it clear himself through 3 debates since June that that's not his position. So it would do us all a big favor if the media would get their act together and quit stirring the pot and creating conflict where it shouldn't exist.
Right, but I mean, you know, he did say it originally, right? No one's going to deny that.
Well,
he
yeah,
said,
okay,
I, Donald Trump, right? But then he said it's going to be certain countries, right? Then it's countries that harbor terrorists. What are those countries? How is that? Is that nothing to do with being Muslim at all? I mean, he's got to iron out very completely what he meant, right? Because he made it very clearly about religion.
He said repeatedly that there's no religious test. And for you all to be coming back and relitigating something that is now that's 5 months old, is what the problem is in our country. The problem is we've got to fill 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of cable stations that create these issues that don't exist and then turn people against each other. If the media is so interested in America coming together, then they ought to do their job and quit stirring the pot where it shouldn't belong.
Do you think, Reince, that he also carries an obligation? You know, you have Muslims in this country who are worried. They are afraid. They're afraid of what will happen to them. They're afraid of whether they'll be kicked out.
But
you have
Aaron,
Muslims in other countries who are afraid they can't come to this country. I've talked to CEOs in other countries who are Muslim who are worried about this. Isn't some of this on Donald Trump to come out and say, you know what, I didn't mean what I said, and here's what I mean, to be very clear, just to be the sort of leader that you're saying he wants to be, someone who promotes unity and no longer believes in that policy?
I think you're very good, but I'm very surprised that this is the conversation we're having. Yesterday morning, think about yesterday morning, he just gave a speech about Americans coming together. And you're asking me now on Thursday whether he needs to do another. I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking for. He's a president for all Americans. He's made that very clear. We're making it clear. And to go back to, you know, old issues when they have been asked over and over again and has been answered by President-elect Trump, people need to understand that he understands. I promise you, I know where his head and heart's at, and he's said it, so just trust his own words. He will be a president for all Americans, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, any religion, any faith. He is your president, and he's going to do a fantastic job, and he understands the gravity and the seriousness of the position.
All right, Reince Priebus, thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, and new tonight, Donald and Melania Trump are back in New York tonight. They had, of course, their big visit to the White House. Melania Trump spent the morning with the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and this is a picture of their first meeting. The two having tea after one of the ugliest presidential campaigns in recent history. Suzanne Malveaux is out front at the White House tonight. Suzanne, despite the bitter campaign, these two women found common ground, and that wasn't easy to do, but they did, cordially. They talked about being mothers.
Yes, I mean, it's the one thing to talk about your kids, right? It's a safe territory. It really is a good icebreaker. That's exactly what Michelle Obama as well as Melania Trump did. You might recall Sasha and Malia were quite young when they went to the White House, the Obama family. And of course, it is Melania Trump that is concerned, very protective of her 10-year-old son, Barron. And so that's something that they share, a very unique experience of having their kids live in the kind of fishbowl atmosphere, but also very isolated as well. This is very different than what their husbands experienced today. No cameras, it was no press, no public statements. As you mentioned, we have one photo from the White House press office, all smiles. We are told that it started off with a tour of the residence and went to the Truman balcony. That is, you know, Aaron, a place where the First Lady and Barack Obama, the president, spending a lot of quality time there. So it's a special place for them. They took them there. And then also Melania was shown taken to the state floor in the White House to meet with the curator of the White House, that is Bill Almond. And he really is a human encyclopedia for all things inside of the building. And so she got a tour, and she also got a lot of ideas about what the White House looks like, the public space as well as the private space. And all of this, as you know, really meant to give them an opportunity, a chance to break the ice here in light of a very bitter campaign. This was with Michelle Obama saying quite publicly, quite forcefully, making her case that she did not believe Melania's husband was fit for the office, and also followed the RNC convention where we saw Melania introduce her husband, but also seemingly take a portion from her speech very similar to Michelle Obama's given in 2008. So there is a lot of fodder there for both of them, but the White House says this is just the first of many meetings, Aaron.
All right. Thank you very much, Suzanne. A meeting, of course, so many want to know. Wouldn't it be great to be a fly on the wall in both of those meetings? Out front now, Philip Bump, Washington Post political reporter, Jackie Kucinich, Washington bureau chief for the Daily Beast, Jeffrey Lord, Donald Trump supporter, Basil Smikle, who supported Hillary Clinton, and David Gergen, who, of course, served as advisor to 4 presidents. And we shall see who ends up being the chief of staff, whether it's Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus, or someone else, David Gergen, who gets that job. Jackie, let me just start, though, with what we just saw, Michelle Obama, Melania Trump meeting. Symbolic moment. for these two women to meet, but obviously very cordial.
Obviously, and both of these meetings between Donald Trump and the president and Melania Trump and Michelle Obama, this is good for the American people to see because it does represent turning the page, going away from this nasty campaign where everyone said mean things about each other. Now we're moving forward, and it's the hallmark of the United States, the peaceful transition of power, and it is heartening to see them talking to each other like civil humans.
I mean, and let's play, because I mean, if anybody wouldn't be able to talk to each other like civil humans, it might be these two people, given what they've said in the past. And yet they were so gracious to each other today. Here's some of the things they had to say about each other.
My priority is my son Baron, our son Baron. I'm a full-time mother to our son Baron.
At the end of the day, my most important title is still Mom in Chief.
Obviously, that wasn't the soundbite I was looking for, but Philip, you know, they do have obviously something in common, Michelle and Melania Trump. But let me play what I wanted to play there, which was President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump saying such nice things about each other today.
And I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team.
Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Very good man. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Heartening image. Heartening things to hear, a heartening image, and hopefully healing for Americans who are so divided right now.
It's amazing in the picture because Donald Trump's sitting in front of a bust of Martin Luther King Jr. It is the peaceful transition of power. I do think it seemed like he was a little nervous, and understandably so. The weight of this job is going to be tremendous, and I think in that 90-minute time period, Donald Trump got an understanding of just how important this role is going to be.
So I want to ask you, Jeffrey, but first to you, David Gergen, on this issue that came up in Reince Priebus and my conversation about in this case, it was about how Donald Trump would treat Muslims. But there are other groups in this country who are also concerned. Does Donald Trump need to speak to these people, some of whom are protesting now, and say if his policies have changed, how and why? Does he need to talk to them, David?
Yes, I think he does. I don't think he needs to do it immediately. And you have to say that both he and President Obama have given us an excellent tone to this transition. It gives us much more assurance about how the transition itself will be conducted. There are going to be issues that come up in the next few days. If Trump names Steve Bannon as his chief of staff, you're going to hear a lot of flurry about that one. But beyond that, I think that over time he does need to reach out. He'll have a couple of speeches coming up, I'm sure, public remarks, where he can say some of those things. But I actually think that if he were more proactive and call some people in and talk to them, that's the kind of smart thing that you sometimes need to do things that are a little daring in order to get attention and people say, okay, I get it. Maybe he means it.
Should he do that, Jeffrey? Call in, have a meeting with whatever group it may be. We were just talking with Reince about Muslim leaders in this country.
Sure. Donald Trump is a good leader. He is a good executive. The Donald Trump you saw there is the Donald Trump that I know and so many of his friends and the people who work for him know. So I totally expect him to be doing this. Now, that said, I want to say something about the protests here. I have the gray hair for a reason. And it's because at my age, I've grown up, and in my lifetime, I have seen, and I'm sure some of these are the same people in the streets over Vietnam. There were 1 million people in the streets protesting Ronald Reagan's nuclear policy. They were demanding a nuclear phrase. As mache heads, it's not a movie, Ron, and saying that he was stupid and a warmonger. They do this all the time. They're going to do this to Donald Trump. They did it to poor Hubert Humphrey in Chicago. So they're not going. Some of these people aren't going to change because it's their profession.
Though this is not vanity. What this is a reaction to real concerns. We may not remember exactly everything that Donald Trump said during the course of the campaign, but we'll remember how we felt. So whether it's the Muslim community, whether it's African Americans being concerned about the reintroduction of stop and frisk, whether it's the immigrant community broadly, I think there is real anger and concern. Now look,
The tone on Tuesday night and today have been great. So the question then becomes, is he going to be the kind of person that is going to be welcoming to all of these communities and let people know that the campaign was not literal, maybe metaphorical, but either way, I am going to be the president for everyone.
Quickly, Phil.
So let me just say, I was in those protests last night. I was covering them for
I
the
was
Post.
watching your Twitter feed.
Yeah, and it was young people. It was young people. It was predominantly young women who are concerned about Donald Trump, not because they are concerned about Donald Trump's policies. They're concerned about Donald Trump as Donald Trump. And Donald Trump cannot sit down and meet with a woman and make that go away. He needs to demonstrate over the course of the next 4 years that he is making significant outreach and not doing the things people are worried about, not doing the things people are worried about with women, not doing the things people are worried about the African American community, not doing the things people are worried about the Muslim community. That's what he needs to do. Sitting down with people now is not going to do a single thing.
Let me hit pause for a moment. All of you staying with me next. Hillary Clinton seen for the first time since her concession speech. My guest, a Hillary Clinton supporter who randomly spotted her in the woods alone on a hike today. Guess who took the picture? Plus the GOP waging war on President Obama's signature achievement. Just rhetoric, or is Obamacare a goner? We have the facts. And ISIS celebrating Donald Trump's victory, vowing dark days ahead for the U.S. What will President Trump do about it? Breaking news, Hillary Clinton seen for the first time today since giving her emotional concession speech after losing to President-elect Donald Trump. A woman hiking with her 13-month-old daughter spotting Clinton as she took a walk near her home in Chappaqua. The woman says former President Bill Clinton was there as well. Out front now, the woman in that picture with Hillary Clinton, Margot Gerster. And Margot, thanks so much for being with me. You posted that picture, and many people want to hear the story. You're out hiking with your daughter. You don't see anyone around. You hear some footsteps, and then there's Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, it was completely by chance and kind of amazing. I mean, I literally hike that trail almost every day. So this was sort of incredible to just randomly run into Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton 2 days after the election.
I mean, did you do a double take? Did you question your eyes for a second, or?
I think I recognized him first before her. And once I realized it was her, I think my face was just like awkward, huge, grinning smile, like, oh my God, like fangirling almost. It was pretty hilarious.
So what did she say to you?
I think I more initiated it. I said, I obviously said hello, and I said something to her along the lines of, all I wanted to do all day yesterday was hug you and tell you how proud I was to bring my daughter with me to vote for you. And, she was very gracious, and she hugged me, and she couldn't have been any nicer. She was very warm, and, she asked me about my daughter, obviously, and, where I was from. And it was just very pleasant. Nothing too serious, She was taking a nice, peaceful hike through the woods. I don't think she wanted to talk, serious politics.
Right, and of course she was, alone, but she was with her husband and dog, as you said. It's just a day, though, Margot, after her concession speech that people saw around the world, an incredibly painful moment for her. How did she seem to you?
Honestly, I think she seemed as well as anybody could be expected after, such a crazy experience. I can't speak for how she was feeling on the inside, but she couldn't have seemed any nicer or, kinder and gracious to me. I think it was a very dark day for a lot of people yesterday. So this was a very hopeful, encouraging moment for me, and that's really why I posted the picture at all.
And Bill Clinton, I know, was there. Margot, did he? He's not in the picture. Was it a selfie, or did he take it?
He took the picture, actually.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your taking the time, Margot. And there are many who were very eager to see this picture, and thank you for sharing it.
You're welcome. I hope it makes people feel, hopeful and comforted, because that's really why I posted it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And my panel is back with me. We're learning a little bit more tonight about what the Clinton campaign thinks went so wrong versus what they expected, Jackie. But obviously, she was out with Bill in the woods taking a walk today. and she posed for that picture. So
life goes on. It has to,
Indeed.
right?
Mhm.
And, you know, the fact that they're out hiking in the woods. But I think, you know, to that woman's point, seeing a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters in my Facebook feed and on Twitter, I think a lot of women especially just wanted to give her a hug. So hearing that, I think she really...
but this woman did that.
That she did that. I think she spoke for a lot of folks out there who are upset.
And there are tens of millions of them, right? I mean, when you look at the vote here, that's how this country
And
split.
it would have been if Donald Trump
half
lost.
the country may be euphoric,
Yeah,
and half the
absolutely.
country
Both sides.
is heartbroken, and it would have been the other way around as well. Basil, the New York Times is reporting, though, that Hillary Clinton privately is admitting she stepped in it. When she did something that Mitt Romney got slammed for, and we know it hurt him when he said 47%, she said deplorables. Let me just play exactly what she said.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that.
Did she make a big mistake? Was that something that a lot of people heard? Pollsters didn't pick it up, and that over the summer could have started to turn that Rust Belt away from her?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the issue. I do think she believes it was a mistake because she said so right afterwards. So, but I actually don't think that in and of itself was the issue. I do believe that the way that she characterized some of Donald Trump's comments, I think those are things that over the course of time we've seen, and, you know, I've remarked about it, others have remarked about it. But I think she was particularly contrite about that and sort of admitted that right off the bat. I think the emails themselves and the consistent stories about those emails, I think, fed into a narrative about her that was difficult to overcome. But I don't think it was that comment itself.
What do you think? Do you think that this actually influenced people who maybe were independent and persuadable?
I think it did. And I want to, in a partial sense, defend Hillary Clinton here. I think she really believes that. But she is not alone. If you notice the response
Really
of
believes the basket of deplorables.
Right, and the string of things she added. I went back and took a look at her famous speech at Wellesley when she was graduating, and it had the same theme. One of the reasons I became a Reaganite conservative instead of I was once upon a time a wannabe liberal when I was in college, is that I began to pick up this contempt for, like, American working people and the American middle class, contempt for their values and all of this sort of thing, which I think American liberalism has come to exemplify. And that little statement from her is a snapshot. I'm totally convinced that she really believes it, and more to the point, the people that were in the room laughing all agreed.
I think you take it a little too far, though, because to say that liberals have this contempt for the working class when so many of us are, and to be able to say that she that she herself has that kind of contempt, I think is stretching that comment to a point it shouldn't go to.
I don't think it should go to. Talk about the candidate. Don't talk about their voters.
That's right. That's true.
Right. But I mean, Jeffrey's also made a good point consistently for weeks now, which is this contrast between the elites that Hillary Clinton represented and Donald Trump, despite where he lives and all of his money, and what he represented to folks. And I think that does reinforce it. But I also agree that I don't think it made a huge difference in terms of the campaign.
Well, I'm going to leave it there. Okay. Thank you. And next, the GOP threatening to rip Obama's signature issue to shreds. So, can you just get rid of Obamacare just like that? Poof. Plus Melania Trump, just like us, jamming to Taylor Swift during a fun night out with Donald driving and son Barron riding shotgun. Breaking news, President-elect Trump promising health care reform will be a top priority as president. No surprise there, but what it means, of course, is getting rid of Obamacare. So, is Obamacare gone? Can it just happen just like that? Tens of millions of Americans, this whole country wants to know, and Manu Raju is out front with answers.
With the campaign now over, Republicans are plotting an assault on the president's signature legacy item, Obamacare.
We're going to fix health care and make it more affordable and better. And we're going to do a real job for the public.
Getting rid of Obamacare has been a GOP rallying cry since the law was enacted more than 6 years ago.
Real change begins with immediately
repealing, and replacing Obamacare.
But they failed repeatedly to overcome Democratic resistance over repealing the law. With Trump now headed to the Oval Office and the GOP controlling both chambers of Congress, the law appears to be on life support.
When Donald Trump said he wants a special session to repeal and replace Obamacare, let me tell you something. As the Speaker of the House, not only yes, but heck yes, we're ready, we're willing, and we have a plan to do that too.
Republicans are likely to hold 52 Senate seats in the new Congress. Because of Senate rules, the GOP only needs 51 votes to kill core aspects of the law. That means subsidies, taxes, and an expansion of Medicaid could be on the chopping block. Yet, there are limits. It would require 60 votes to repeal other provisions, such as allowing people who have pre-existing conditions to get health insurance. Plus, Republicans would need Democratic support on a bill to replace Obamacare, a difficult task over such a polarizing issue. Obama making an appeal to voters while campaigning for Hillary Clinton.
20 million Americans have health insurance that didn't have it before. But make no mistake, all that progress goes down the drain if we don't win tomorrow.
Democrats in Congress plan to fight tooth and nail to save the sweeping law.
If we're going to repeal and replace, we need to replace it with something that doesn't take health care away or insurance away from 20 million people.
But GOP leaders say that voters expect them to do away with Obamacare.
Let's just stipulate that every single Republican thought Obamacare was a mistake, without exception. That's still our view, and you can expect us, with a new president who has the same view, to address that issue.
Now, passing a replacement bill could take up to 2 years, Aaron, the entire duration of Congress. That's if they get Democratic support. And in the meantime, as the Obama administration leaves office, they're redoubling efforts to get people to sign up through the healthcare.gov website. They announced that on Wednesday, the day after the election. 100,000 people signed up, the best day yet in their open enrollment period. Shows how difficult it will be for Republicans to simply gut the law that people are signing up for, Aaron.
This is going to be a fascinating one to watch, but I think it can go in the category of a promise that Trump will keep, no matter what. Thank you very much, Manu Raju. And out front next, ISIS rejoicing in a Trump win and threatening to bring disaster to America. So what is President-elect Trump going to do about it? Plus the other side of Melania Trump. Look at this, Donald Trump driving, Barron in the front seat, and Melania filming in the back. Breaking news, we're watching anti-Trump protests again across the country tonight. Washington to Minneapolis, as President-elect's team is working to fill roughly 4,000 jobs within his administration. That's a Herculean task, and they don't have much time to do it. He's going to be meeting with his transition team tomorrow. And the top priority is the 800 jobs that require security clearance. Out front tonight, a man who has been working since long before Election Day on Trump's national security team. The former chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Mike Rogers, also national security commentator and host of the CNN original series Declassified. And Congressman Rogers, good to talk to you again. It's been about 41 hours since the seismic event that so few expected. Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. You've been working with the Trump team for a long time before Election Day, but take me inside the room for these 41 hours. What has this been like for you?
Well, can't take you too far into the room, Aaron, but what I can tell you is this. This was very professionally run. I saw some early reports that, oh no, they don't have a transition team, they weren't engaged in it. This was very separate from the campaign. If Trump was up 10 points or down 50 points, it never mattered. All of the metrics of putting together a professional transition was underway since about August. And so the election came. I think there were some surprises for the folks on the transition team, thinking it was a day that we were going to hand in our gear, and instead it turned around. Here's the good news. All of that preparation had already happened up to Election Day. So the surprise in the election didn't change that. So President-elect Trump is going to get a full and robust package, everything from national security to economics to all of it, including, by the way, pre-vetting of individuals that they believed could fill some of these important jobs so that he can get up and running and make sure that the country is taken care of. And I will tell you, the Obama administration has been very professional. They took the model from George W. Bush and said, we want to duplicate it, and they've lived up to that. A very professional transition to make sure that the change, the handoff of the baton is good for America at the end of the day. So that part has been really refreshing and gives you faith, I think, a little bit in the country.
Now, an area, of course, that you know all too well, ISIS, al-Qaeda terrorists, they've been celebrating Donald Trump's victory on web forums, saying it will bring disasters to the United States on social media. What's your reaction when you hear that?
Fill in the candidate that would have won. Either one they're going to do this. Remember, in the terrorist realm, they're getting really good at psychological operations using social media. So I would discard it pretty much immediately. There'll be a change. I'm sure there's going to be a change in strategy for sure and for certain when it comes to targeting ISIS. But that effort is really try to get into America's head and our allies in Europe. So I think you got to shrug that off like you would shrug anything else off, Aaron. And remember, they have a goal here. They're trying to disrupt. They're trying to cause a little questioning. They're trying to cause a little disruption. We ought not to let them do it.
So let me just ask you quickly. Barbara Starr is saying that if Trump gave the illegal order, of course, which it would be if he ordered waterboarding to some generals, they would force the president-elect to fire them. They can't resign. Is he ready to do that, to fire a general who would not comply with that order?
It's so purely speculation, and that's so early. Yep. He's going to get in. He's going to get lots of briefings. He's going to understand what his options are. He's going to understand what his legal options are. I have no indication, not even a little bit, that he's going to go outside of the bounds of his legal boundaries. I think that's all campaign speculation. I dismiss it. This is a president who's come in and said, I want professionals in all of these places. They've done that. There is this professional transition. He's going to get professional advice. Okay. I think he's going to take it.
And very quickly before we go, FBI special agent for 5 years. You are respected on both sides of the aisle. A lot of people are saying you could be up for a top job. Say CIA director. Would you take it if offered, Congressman?
I can't even. Wouldn't even hesitate to bother to speculate. We've got a pretty important job of making sure that this president is ready to govern on January 21st. The whole focus of the transition team is that. Really, honestly, nothing more.
All right, Congressman Rogers, I appreciate your time. Good to talk to you tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you. And next, Melania Trump embracing her new title. Will Melania Trump be a model first lady? Here's Jeannie Mose.
She's been a model, she's done commercials. She may seem like an odd duck for a first lady, but Melania Trump is just like us. At least on first glance at her Facebook, where she posts videos of beautiful beaches. And that great Aerosmith concert she attended, as well as the fun night with my two boys, Donald J. Trump and their son Barry. The Donald is driving, his son riding shotgun. Unlike her husband, Melania's not addicted to Twitter, but some of her older tweeted photos are fun. Melania as Batwoman for Halloween, wearing a catsuit, teasing her husband, honey, see you soon. And there's this oldie but goodie, the Clintons at the Trumps' wedding. Okay, maybe she's not just like us.
Hi fans, it's Melania Trump.
Not everyone has fans.
Hi fans, I'm going to Metropolitan Gala
and not everyone goes to galas in designer gowns.
Christian Siriano did for me, and I thank you, Christian. It's a beautiful job, fantastic job.
You can't say Melania hasn't had plenty of training for all those state dinners she and President Trump will be hosting. Almost instantly after the election, Melania updated her Instagram. At Real Melania Trump became at First Lady Melania Trump. On Thursday, she chronicled her trip to Washington, writing, "Such an honor to visit the White House." Little did she know this would end up being her home, back when she tweeted this photo captioned, "At home with my husband." Don't worry, Melania, there is a piano in the White House, should you feel the urge to recline. Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.
And thanks for watching us. Don't forget, you can watch Out Front anytime, anywhere on CNN Go. We will see you back here tomorrow. AC 360 with Anderson Cooper begins right now.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with breaking news. A lot to cover. Second night of some post-election protests in a number of American cities. People taking to the streets to protest the election of Donald Trump. We're looking at scenes at a number of cities around the country. Meanwhile, at the White House today, another extraordinary image. The images you're looking at right now are Chicago, Denver, Baltimore as well. At the White House today, extraordinary images. President Obama, after a meeting with President-elect Donald Trump, Trump, as you remember, tried hard to delegitimize President Obama or Obama's presidency, claiming for years that he wasn't born in the United States. On the campaign trail, the president said that Donald Trump was unqualified, and Trump said the president was to blame for ISIS. Today, though, it was all about the future. Jim Acosta tonight reports.
It was an image designed to calm a nervous world. The president and the president-elect, fresh off the political battlefield, sitting together in the Oval Office, calling on a divided nation to come together.
And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
Following his 90-minute meeting with President Obama, Donald Trump offered his own display of restraint and respect.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
And as reporters were ushered out of the room, Trump added one more compliment for the president.
Very good man.
And even got a little advice from the president.
Here's a good rule. Don't answer the questions when they just start.
It's always the last one.
Away from the news cameras, First Lady Michelle Obama and soon-to-be First Lady Melania Trump met in private. As two key transition figures, White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough and Trump's son-in-law and top aide Jared Kushner went for a long stroll on the South Lawn. It was all a far cry from the down-and-dirty campaign that just wrapped up earlier this week.
If his closest advisors don't trust him to tweet, why would any of us trust him with the nuclear codes?
Mr. Obama argued Trump was unfit for the White House only weeks after the GOP nominee finally conceded the president was an American citizen.
President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
Their last encounter face-to-face came when the president mocked the idea of a Trump administration 5 years ago.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
Top Trump advisors like New Jersey Governor Chris Christie are trying to lower the temperature, suggesting the new president will not seek to imprison Hillary Clinton, as he suggested during the campaign.
Politics are over now. People have spoken. Time to move to uniting the country.
Though Rudy Giuliani made it clear Trump is determined to carry out his plans, including that wall on the Mexican border.
The wall is going to take a while. I'm sure he's going to build it. It's a campaign promise.
And Jim Acosta joins us now. I understand President Obama is standing by what he said on the campaign trail about Donald Trump. What did the administration say about their differences?
Well, they still exist big time, Anderson. I talked to a senior White House official today who basically said, listen, people at the White House, including the president, they've not changed their minds about Donald Trump. Some of the people here are absolutely mortified that he's going to become the president of the United States. What they're committed to is the smooth transfer of power that's coming up on January 20th, and they're working towards that. But you heard Donald Trump say today he's looking forward to having the president's counsel in the future. I bounced that off of a senior administration official, and this person said that would be, quote, unbelievable. So, you know, while this was a good image to show the world today of the president and the president-elect getting along with each other there in the Oval Office, make no mistake, they are still I would say bitter political rivals, and that's not going to change. It doesn't matter how many times they meet in the White House. That's going to remain the same, Anderson.
This is a dumb follow-up question, but when that person said unbelievable, did he mean like, wow, that would be unbelievable, that'd be great, or that would be unbelievable, that's not going to happen?
meaning that that's not going to happen. But this person also said that, one thing that we should point out, and this has been a question all along, is would President Obama stand next to President Trump at the Capitol for his inauguration? Remember, this is somebody, as we said in that piece, who questioned whether President Obama was born in this country and so on and so forth. And what was relayed to me is that look at what happened in the Oval Office today. The president is committed to this smooth transfer of power. He is showing respect to the person who is coming in to take his place. And so, yes, you can expect to see the president with President Trump on January 20th next year. Anderson.
We should also point out respect, it seemed, was being shown by both men today. Donald Trump saying positive things there about President Obama. Jim Costa, thanks very much. The president-elect also met today with House Speaker Paul Ryan. He showed him the sights, including Ryan's balcony overlooking the Washington Monument and the platform where Donald Trump will be sworn in as president. Donald Trump said the meeting went well.
So we had a very good meeting, a very detailed meeting, and we're going to lower taxes, as you know, and we're going to fix health care and make it more affordable and better. And we're going to do a real job for the public, and that's what we want to do, and that's why we're excited.
Phil Mattingly joins me now with more on that meeting. So, Paul Ryan, Donald Trump's relationship certainly had been fraught, to say the least, during the campaigns, but a campaign is one thing, governance is another. He's the president-elect. How did things go today?
Well, it's complicated. It's probably the best way to describe their relationship over the course of the last 6 months. But I think what you note from today, both in the comments from Donald Trump and Paul Ryan after the meeting and also from talking to advisors, is they're looking forward. They're not talking about the campaign. They're not talking about what still remain very real policy differences between the two men. They're talking about what they can do together. That's the focus. That's, I think, what you're going to see from both Donald Trump and House Republicans in the weeks and months ahead. Try and find the things that they can work on together and try and move those forward, Anderson.
They do need each other, obviously, in order to make things work.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? They can't move anything forward without the other. If Donald Trump has crucial agenda items, he needs House Republicans. If Paul Ryan wants to move his Better Way plan, the 6-point proposal he's been pushing in the House for the last couple of months, he needs the White House. And with that in mind, that's why I think you're going to see them try and put the past behind them, try and move forward over these next couple of weeks and months.
Trump also met with other top Republican congressional leaders today, many of whom he attacked on the campaign trail. Is there a sense, if he was able to improve on some of those relationships, ones which were going to be very crucial, again, to the success of his presidency?
Look, I think on the personal side, there's work to do. There's no question about it. You talk to Republicans in both chambers. You talk to Republicans off Capitol Hill. There's work for Donald Trump and his administration to do. But there's also a cold political calculation here that I think is important. Republicans for the last 7 years in the House have basically been passing bill after bill after bill, and it's collected dust as President Obama has either threatened to veto it or is blocked in the Senate. In the Senate, in the last couple of years, they've been passing bill after bill after bill, and it can't go anywhere. Now it can. They have a Republican in the White House. There's a lot of enthusiasm, even amongst Republicans who have had real problems with Donald Trump over the last 6, 7, 8 months. A lot of enthusiasm about what they can do going forward. That's what everybody seems to be grabbing onto right now. It'll be up to Donald Trump to see if he can prove that enthusiasm has some merit behind it. But I think that's what you're hearing right now from Capitol Hill Republicans. Excitement and enthusiasm, Anderson.
Phil Mattingly. Phil, thanks very much. Joining me now is the person behind Trump's winning campaign, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, first of all, congratulations. An amazing, incredible victory. There's a lot of news today I want to ask you about, but first I want to give you some props. In pretty much every interview I ever did with you, you were out there talking about the enthusiasm gap that you were seeing among voters from your candidate compared to Secretary Clinton. The Clinton followers didn't have the same enthusiasm that Trump's followers did, and you were absolutely right. We saw that enthusiasm certainly Tuesday night. We didn't see it there for Hillary Clinton. Were your internal polls showing that enthusiasm gap, or was that just kind of what you were feeling out on the campaign trail?
Both. I think if you ever showed up at a Donald Trump rally, you just see there are 20,000 people inside and 5 or 10 outside, and they're there because they feel like they're part of the movement. They felt like he was giving voice to the forgotten man and forgotten woman, and they were always very happy to be there, Anderson. I rarely heard people say, may I have his autograph, or I enjoyed you on The Apprentice. They would say, we need jobs in this part of my state, or thank you for running, making the sacrifice, and for your patriotism and for talking about trade, immigration issues nobody wanted to give voice to. I do want to say I appreciate the props, but it's just shared by the whole team, and most of all, Mr. Trump and Governor Pence. Candidates matter. And he was an amazing candidate, an unconventional, non-political outsider, exactly what voters have been telling pollsters for decades they would like to have in politics, but we never really had anybody ascend to that level and become the nominee.
But certainly when you came on and Steve Bannon came on, I mean, you both clearly helped sharpen his message and keep him on focus a lot more than he had been. So I know you want to share the props, but I think you get a lot of it clearly. There was Sarah Huckabee Sanders, a senior campaign advisor, said that the campaign's internal polling was as off as the rest of the polling. Is that true?
Actually, that's not true. I don't know if she ever saw the poll. I don't know where that comes from. But in terms of the modeling that we were doing internally, we always saw Pennsylvania as competitive, particularly in those last few weeks. It's a state that always felt right for the Donald Trump message, and we kept on. Mr. Trump and Governor Pence kept returning there. Ivanka Trump, Don June, Tiffany, they had all been in Pennsylvania. Melania Trump gave a fabulous speech there just a week ago tonight. Was very well received in a county that we ended up doing very well in. That people said we were not going to do well in. And that's a state where no public poll, Anderson, no public poll had Mr. Trump in the lead in Pennsylvania. But we didn't much care because we knew that the investment of the ground game, the field operation, our state director there and his team were fantastic. And Trump himself, whenever he went into the state, we were there last Friday night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, one of those other situations. You have 18,000 inside, you have thousands outside watching on the Jumbotron. In addition, I just wanted to repeat something because you allowed me to have this platform many times on behalf of the Trump-Pence campaign. You and I also talked many times about the 46 to 47% ceiling that Hillary Clinton seemed to have, and indeed she did. And that is something else we focused on. It was we saw she had this stubborn ceiling of 46, 47, 48% at the high water mark in states that President Obama had carried twice by well over 50% of the vote. And so we saw that she was not going to be able to bring together and keep that Obama coalition. And I think a lot of the external polling, that CNN talked about and elsewhere, frankly, it was missing the fact that Hillary Clinton is not Barack Obama, but it was also missing the fact that Donald Trump certainly was a very different messenger with a different message than Mitt Romney or John McCain or your garden variety Republican nominee, and I think in the end it mattered.
Well, it's also interesting, I mean, and I was going to bring up that 46% as well. There were a lot of Democrats in the final days of the campaign talking no longer about an Obama coalition, but a Clinton coalition. It doesn't seem like that Clinton coalition, it certainly wasn't as strong as the Obama coalition had been. I mean, there were millions of voters who had voted for Obama who just stayed home.
It was not, and I think for several reasons. First of all, every candidate is different. Secondly, I don't think cool is transferable. And President Obama did his level best to get out there on the campaign trail for Secretary Clinton. He and First Lady Michelle Obama. I frankly think they did their part in campaigning for her. But, in the end, I think some of her surrogates also showed that she needed them. I think when you get the rappers out there and you get some celebrities out there, it tends to detract from the messenger. And frankly, Donald Trump was his best messenger. You can't take that away from him. He was his best messenger. The other thing I would just say to you is that this was always a change election. And people missed something that was so obvious in front of them. You simply can't say, hey, 70% of Americans want to take the country in a new and different direction, and yet they're not going to vote for the guy that represents a new and different direction. They, in fact, did vote for the guy. And also, I think in modeling the electorate, there were conclusions in search of evidence. I think politics today, Anderson, puts people in boxes too easily. Political pundits put people in boxes too easily. The media certainly do. They're only looking at us by our gender, our race, our ethnicity, our religion. And we need to look at people situationally. If you're one of the millions of Americans who was negatively affected by the Obamacare premium increases, you heard Donald Trump loud and clear in the second half of October talking about that religiously every single day. If you're somebody who's in a union household, you look like a Democratic voter, but you were very, very attracted to his message of renegotiating bad trade deals and bringing those jobs back from Mexico and China.
Which was interesting because a lot of the union leaders were vocally for Hillary Clinton, yet the rank and file, as a lot of folks predicted on the Republican side, went for Donald Trump. There's a lot of news today I'd love to talk to you about. We've got to take a quick break. If you could just stay tuned just for a couple more minutes, we'll come right back. We're also keeping an eye on multiple protests going on around the country, a second night of protests against the election of Donald Trump. We'll be right back.
The relief.
Well, for a second night in multiple cities across the country, we're seeing protests against the election of Donald Trump. Ana Cabrera has been following. She joins me now from Denver. Ana.
Hi, Anderson. We are walking along Denver's 16th Street Mall right now. We started at the state capitol, and you can see there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are walking alongside me. We're in the middle of this group that is a group of people of all ages, of all walks of life, of all races. The majority very peaceful. This all began with meditation, with prayer, with a lot of peaceful talk at the state capitol in which they said this is not about hating Donald Trump. This is about stopping hate. It's about rejecting bigotry, racism, homophobia, and all of those types of things, oppression. They said this is about creating change and standing up to those things that they reject. And so they want to show a force, a show of unity, and a show that there is another way. You know, a lot of people we've been talking to here in the crowd have expressed fear after learning the results of the presidential election because of what they believe Donald Trump has represented and a lot of his rhetoric that he has said on the campaign trail. And at this point, they are trying to channel their energy and emotion in a more productive way, Anderson.
All right, Ana Cabrera will continue checking with you. Now, before the break, I was speaking with one of the people who played a major role in putting Donald Trump in the White House, his campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway. She joins me again. Kellyanne, let's start by asking about these protests that we've been seeing both last night and tonight. I'm sure President-elect Donald Trump has seen them. Has he said anything to you directly about them? What are your thoughts on them and when you see this?
We have not discussed that, Anderson, but I would just commend the protesters to listen to Donald Trump from his victory night speech, where he said, I will be the president of all Americans, including those who did not support me and who don't support me. I also would tell them, please take a look at what happened today. Less than 36 hours after being elected president of the United States, Donald Trump and his wife Melania Trump, our next First Lady, went down to Washington and met with President and First Lady Obama. And I think people should really echo what happened today in Washington. It was a great meeting. Mr. Trump described it to me. He said, I had never met President Obama. I liked him a lot. We had a very warm and professional meeting. He was terrific. First Lady Michelle Obama and Melania had a, quote, fantastic meeting. And he said to me they could not have been more warm and more welcoming to the Trumps. And I think America should look at that and take their cues from that, that if President and First Lady Obama and President-elect and First Lady, I guess almost elect, Trump could get along, then they should too. I mean, we all share a love of America and of democracy. And, you know, Anderson, I can't help but think what the conversation would be right now in the media and otherwise if this were the reverse. If Hillary Clinton had been elected and Donald Trump protesters were out there, everybody would be, you know, they'd be having a canary, really. So,
and it's fun, you raised a point we actually discussed last night, and which I raised, which is, yeah, if Hillary Clinton had been elected and there were Donald Trump protesters out there saying lock her up, how would people view that? And I think that's a valid question when you look at the protesters out there tonight. You talked about the meeting with President Obama. President-elect Trump said that he, quote, looked forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. Do you expect there will actually be additional face-to-face meetings between the president and the president-elect between now and January 20th?
There may be, and I'm telling you, Mr. Trump was just very happy with the meeting today. And look, Anderson, as you and I know, it's a very small group of people who are former presidents, and he was all too happy to be there, as were the First Ladies, if you will. And I also talked to Governor Pence after his meetings, both up on Capitol Hill, and then Governor Pence and Vice President Biden met later in the day this afternoon. Governor Pence tells me that the Pence family has accepted the gracious invitation of the Biden family to join them for a meal next week at the Naval Observatory. And I just think what you see in common here is people who love this country, are willing to serve for the right reasons, and want to make sure there is a peaceful transition. And I hope the protesters will follow suit.
This morning, as you know, Trump advisor Mayor Rudy Giuliani said that he thought President-elect Trump should start with tax reform because, in his words, he's got the votes for it. Donald Trump is obviously on the campaign trail, talked about a number of things to start with on day one. He talked about Obamacare today. Can you say definitively what will be President Trump's first legislative priority?
Well, he has talked definitively about it. He's even laid out his, quote, 100-day plan. I think that was a big inflection point in the campaign, actually, in late October when people saw the 100-day plan. They can read for themselves and decide whether it's something they could support, and many did. So that would include repealing and replacing Obamacare. It would include tax reform, which is a very complex issue, as you know. His plan is out there for all to see, so I think that happens in pieces. Maybe rolling back the 600 or so regulations that we've had in the last administration. But repealing and replacing Obamacare, it's something that the House and the Senate have voted on many times, but you need a Republican president to really complete the transaction. And, you know, Anderson, I can't help but realize that in addition to electing Trump and Pence as president and vice president, this country also kept Republicans in the House and Senate. And I think what they're signaling is, and by the way, 69 out of the 99 legislative chambers as well, what they're also signaling is, look, we are tired of people hiding behind divided government, of getting nothing done in Washington and saying, oh, the government's divided, whether you're the Republicans in the Congress or you're the president. And whatever the case is, you're able to hide behind. So people are actually saying, it's not just that I liked being part of the movement and I actually want you to get it done. And so they are poised to do that. And I think that's a message that Speaker Ryan and Leader McConnell are sending out tonight, too, privately in the meetings and publicly in their comments, which is we're poised to help pass this legislation. Also, as you know, we have a Supreme Court vacancy, and we'll have other federal judgeships that are vacant. That's also going to be a quick order of business.
Do you have a sense, every president has a different leadership style. Jimmy Carter, the stories on him was that, he read every piece of paper and got, mired in the weeds and the details of things. Ronald Reagan was much more sort of big picture, delegating things out to others who were very experienced, who he had brought with him, who were very loyal to him. How do you see Donald Trump as president? Do you see him as a detail guy who, is up late at night reading briefing books, as people said President Obama did, or is he more of an instinctive leader and sort of a delegator?
Well, he's both. And to the extent that Donald Trump ever delegates responsibility, he never abdicates responsibility, and there's a huge difference. Everybody knows who the leader is here. Everyone will know who the president and the ultimate decision maker is here. It's how he ran his campaign. It's how he's run his businesses. I walk into Trump Tower every day, Anderson, and I'm quickly reminded that this man did very well for himself, is an American dream success story writ large, long before any of us walked through the door. And I think as president, he will continue to be a very detail-oriented decision maker. Also, his instincts, the man is brilliant. I mean, Donald Trump is brilliant, and he is also his instincts are incredible. Not just his political instincts, just his instincts. He reads people very well. He's a transactional guy who knows what he needs to know for that transaction, that issue, that meeting. And he's also, on the campaign trail, he's the guy who actually put out the substantive policy. People may not realize that. They may not agree with it, but it's there for them to read. Everything from the 10-point plan on reforming the Veterans Administration to the 4 or 5-point tax reform plan to the 4 or 5-point plan to defeat radical Islamic terrorism. The plans, the policies are out there. And I think that nobody should be surprised what he does as president, but he's the leader here, and I think it's a combination of instincts and detail orientation.
Obviously, you're not going to say who's getting what position. That's still in transition. But you did push back on Twitter on some reporting that you were reluctant to take an administrative job, saying, quote, false. Could it be the sources want the White House job I've been offered? Can you say what White House job you have been offered?
No, I can't.
I know you can't,
There you go. That's between President-elect Trump and me at the moment. And to be frank with you, I'm not that focused on me. We have transitioned a government to form. I will also tell you that yesterday and today, some of the younger staff members on our incredible team at Trump headquarters who don't get any airtime and probably get no recognition, they've been leaving, and we hope to see them again. But I wanted to make sure that they know how appreciative we are. We had a fraction of the staff that Team Clinton had. We certainly had a fraction of the budget. And I can't tell you how moved I am by the young men and women who were part of our team and, just hunker down, are impervious to the critics and the naysayers, all the slings and arrows, and really believed in this man and his movement practically from the beginning. And I just want to say publicly how much I credit them. But look, I also don't want to speculate. This is Donald Trump's presidency. It's the government he needs to form. And I just think the criteria are very obvious. He needs people around him who are qualified, capable of doing the job, and also people who are loyal to him.
Yeah. Kellyanne Conway, I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Anderson.
And congratulations again. A lot to talk about with our panel in just a moment as we keep an eye on some of the protests across the country. Should President-elect Trump reach out to the protesters in the name of unity he's now calling for? Some thoughts on that in a moment. Number of anti-Trump protests happening for a second night in cities across the country. Just moments ago in Baltimore, police chased down some of the protesters. One officer seemed to apprehend one of the protesters. This is just from a few moments ago in Baltimore. Here we go. Tackling down one of the protesters. Looks like the officer put the protester in handcuffs. We're obviously not sure what led to this incident. We're going to continue to monitor the protest. Joining me now on the panel tonight, Inside Politics anchor John King, CNN political analyst and USA Today columnist Kirsten Powers, chief political correspondent Dana Bash, chief political analyst Gloria Borger, three of our finest CNN political commentators, also Trump supporter Kayleigh McEnany, Van Jones, co-founder and president of Rebuild the Dream, and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, also former Georgia Congressman Jack Kingston. John King, you heard Kellyanne tonight talking about the transfer of power. We saw the images out of the White House today on Capitol Hill with Paul Ryan. How does it seem to be going to you?
I think it is a remarkable moment, and she's absolutely right that the American people should watch this, and all Americans, no matter who you voted for, who you support, should just feel comfortable that we get this part right. And I think the president has been extremely gracious, and she's absolutely right, too, about Donald Trump's speech. I do think to the point about these protesters, at some point he's going to have to address the mood in the country. He doesn't have to address that now. I think people saying, why, they're in the streets. He just won an election, and he's planning a transition that's incredibly important. But I'm sure he's aware of this. He follows the media. We learned this from the campaign. He pays very close attention, and it's his job and his responsibility now to, at some point, speak to this and to lead in a way that addresses this. But to say Donald Trump should, come out every 10 minutes when there's a protest, that's unrealistic. To your point about had the tables been turned, I would hope if the tables had been turned and the protesters were overwhelmingly peaceful as they are now, we would say those disappointed Trump voters have every right to go out in the street and protest. God bless them, be safe, and do it right. Air your concerns. That's mostly what we're seeing here in this. Not only is there nothing wrong with it, there's everything right with this.
Kirsten, it is interesting. I mean, the freak out among Democrats and liberals, I'm sure everybody has friends who is texting them freaking out. I mean, the last several days, I don't know if it calms people, but everything seems to have been, I mean, if you thought there would be a kind of radical revolution in Washington, I mean, we're seeing the peaceful transfer of power as we have seen from administration to administration in years past.
Yeah, but we're in a honeymoon period right now, and this is, I think, a lot about the fundamental respect people have for the office of the President of the United States, right? So I think Donald Trump showed up today and showed a certain amount of deference and respect to the office of the president. And I also think Kellyanne is right. I've interviewed Donald Trump a couple times. He can be very gracious when he wants to be. He can be very charming. Where you have problems is when he feels he's being disrespected and when he feels he's being attacked. So we have to see what happens once we move forward and he starts meeting some resistance. We've already seen Mitch McConnell suggesting he's going to resist him on some things. I think we will then again start to maybe see this more pugilistic Donald Trump when he faces that.
But the good news is there is a honeymoon period, right? You're right. There's no question it's a honeymoon period. But in this day and age, after this kind of election, who knows? And the fact that there is normalcy now, that the president and the president-elect are treating each other the way that they should, that because Donald Trump was not the choice of his fellow Republicans, that he and his Republican leaders in Congress are treating each other the way that they should, and so on, says a lot. There's no question about it. I agree with you that he's definitely gracious and charming when he wants to be. But I saw something else in those images from the Oval Office. He actually looked like humbled a little bit, which it is never, ever a word I would ever think I would use to describe Donald Trump. Well, but seeing him sitting in that Oval Office, because it is the Oval Office, sort of realizing that is going to be his office, sitting next to the guy that he trashed for 5 years, realizing, you know what, and saying he's not that bad. He's a kind of a good guy now that I know his character, not his caricature, was really amazing.
Well, it's one thing to run for the White House. It's another thing to actually be sitting in the White House, realizing it's about to be your White House.
And he had visited the White House socially, I believe, during the Reagan years, but never to have a chat with the President of the United States. And I agree with Dana. I think he was humbled. I don't think he's president yet. He hasn't proposed anything yet. He hasn't done anything yet. And I was surprised today when he was talking about the president, and he said he explained some of the really great things that have been achieved. And I thought, well, what did the president say to him? What's been achieved that Donald Trump doesn't know about that he now thinks are really great, that he didn't think were so great during the election?
You know, Van, you heard Kellyanne talking about the protesters, and would the reaction be the same if it was, anti-Hillary Clinton protesters, had she had won? I mean, this going on a second night. You talked about this last night, about the fear that some people have expressed. How do you see things today?
This will continue. I agree that it is good that it is peaceful. I do think that if the right were marching, there would be more of a freak out from liberals, because liberals like to freak out about stuff. And also, frankly, the right doesn't march that often. Yeah. And so right wing, this is almost boring. Like Jeff was saying, whatever. And so the right doesn't march that much. So I do think there would be more of a freak out. But I think that those of us here would be saying, hey, respect these guys' rights. I think that if there's one thing that Donald Trump could do now that might calm some people, we're on track for a tragedy. I predict stuff all the time. People tell me I'm wrong, and then they come back and they say I was right. Right now, there are some people who are reporting from the Muslim community that there's been an increase in women getting punched because they have the hijab, people being spit on, people, these kinds of things. At some point, I think that Donald Trump could come out and just say, we're all Americans, and speak specifically to the Muslim community, specifically to the Latino community, and show that kind of moral leadership. My concern is if he doesn't, if you could be on track to some kind of tragedy, which then people say, well, see, it was because of this thing. You have to make these decisions early on to signal to your followers and to the country who you are. It's only been 36 hours. He hasn't done it yet. But I'm telling you right now, given the reports coming out of the Muslim community, we are on track to some kind of a tragedy. He could get out in front of it. I hope he does.
Kellyanne?
Everyone asked, what is Donald Trump going to do? How's he going to deal with this? How's he going to unite the country? We got our first indicator when he gave that amazing speech Tuesday night. And he came out and praised his competitor and then said, I want to lead a movement of all races and all religions, an inclusive movement. And then he went in that White House today. It was supposed to be 10 to 15 minutes and ended up being an hour and a half. And you had the president come out and say, point blank, if Donald Trump succeeds, this country succeeds. Recall when Donald Trump met with the president of Mexico and everyone said, how is this going to go over? They're going to have an icy relationship. Donald Trump came out of that meeting with the president of Mexico on board. Donald Trump is a unifier. He's someone who can negotiate. That is his best skill set. And we are going to see a president who makes deals on behalf of the American people.
We got to take a quick Van, but
I want to say, the past 36 hours, you could not script a better human being than Donald Trump has been. You couldn't. If you sat down and tried to come up with it, he has been spectacular. And there are more things he can do to carry this momentum forward.
All right, more of this conversation in a moment. I'm going to also talk to Khizr Khan, the Gold Star father, who spoke at the Democratic Convention, called out Donald Trump for his proposed ban on Muslims. He joins us ahead as well.
I will gladly lend you my copy.
Well, this presidential election has been life-changing for many people, including the parents of a Muslim American soldier killed in Iraq. At the Democratic Convention, you remember Khizr Khan, with his wife at his side, spoke about their son who died protecting his fellow soldiers.
Donald Trump, you're asking Americans to trust you with their future. Have you ever been to Arlington Cemetery? Go look at the graves of brave patriots who died defending United States of America. You will see all faiths, genders, and ethnicities. You have sacrificed nothing and no one.
Well, Mr. Trump, you may recall, spoke back in an interview saying that he'd made a lot of sacrifices by creating thousands of jobs. He also tweeted, Mr. Khan, who does not know me, viciously attacked me from the stage of the DNC and is now all over TV doing the same. Nice. In another tweet, he wrote, this story is not about Mr. Khan, who is all over the place doing interviews, but rather radical Islamic terrorism in the U.S. Get Smart. Khizr Khan joins me now. Mr. Khan, thanks so much for being with us. We should say Donald Trump has subsequently said that your son is, in fact, obviously a hero. I'm just wondering, Tuesday night, when you realized Donald Trump was going to become the next president, what went through your mind?
Of course, we were disappointed. We are disappointed. But our faith in the constitutional democracy of United States is affirmed that this process must continue. With that, our faith in the constitutional values of this country are affirmed. We are reminded again and again, all day today and yesterday, of the peaceful transition under the Constitution. And I remind Donald Trump and his surrogates that on the next page of the Constitution are written, my rights are written, rights of all citizens of this country, that they will not be intimidated, that they will not be harassed because of their religion, because of their faith. Of course, we were disappointed because of the results, but with that, as I mentioned, our faith is reaffirmed in the process of this country.
Well, you know, some of the protests that we've seen over the last 2 nights, some people are holding up signs saying Donald Trump is not my president. Will Donald Trump be your president?
Well, he is still president-elect. And if he does not follow the Constitution which has made him president, how would I have my faith? He has been elected president, but he has to earn our respect. He has to earn the position of the presidency. That needs to be seen. These protests are indicative of how many people have been intimidated, how many people feel that their rights have not been fully guaranteed. And we appeal to the surrogates of Donald Trump and to him himself that he needs to take the first step to make sure that the concerns that are being addressed. I have just a few hours ago found out that Muslims are being intimidated by Donald Trump's supporters wearing the T-shirts, wearing the caps of Donald Trump. They're attacking Muslims, Muslim women snatching their headscarves. In New York, in Louisiana, in Los Angeles, mosques are being attacked by people throwing things, and that needs to stop. That does not hearten that the end of this process, the constitutional values and guarantees. On one hand, we are reminded peaceful transition. On other hand, we are simply left on the street, wandering. And these protesters, they are protesting because of the fear, because of the concern, because of the intimidation.
Do you want to, I mean, Donald Trump has, Van Jones was on earlier saying Donald Trump has done in the last 36 hours, which is the only time he's been president-elect, he's done pretty much everything he can to sort of try to encourage that message of, he said that he wants to be president for all the people. Obviously, that's different than rhetoric we heard his opponents would say during the campaign. What do you want him to, actually come out at some point and talk about the importance of respecting the rights of Muslims in America? What do you want to hear?
We see the direct result of that un-American rhetoric, hating people, sowing the seed of division, sowing the seed of religious hatred. We want him and his surrogates to come out and calm down their supporters so that they will not continue in the mode of election. Election is over now. His supporters need to back off. His supporters need to understand that if they have won the election, this intimidation, this harassment of people of faith needs to stop, and he needs to come out and not only speak to them, but speak to the nation, speak to people and say that is not how we are going to be healing, that is not the path to reconciliation. He needs to stand up and in addition to President Obama is still the president. He has the obligation to address the concerns of these people on the street, people that are being intimidated and harassed.
Just finally, what do you think your son, Humayun Khan, what do you think he would be surprised by how involved you have been, by how public you have been?
He will be so proud of us. He at the last breath that he took, it was in care of others. We did not stand up to speak for ourselves. We stood up, we remain standing, and we will continue to speak for the protection, for the benefit, for the protection of rights of others, and he will be so proud to be standing next to us.
Humayun Khan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Up next, what supporters of President-elect Donald Trump want to see him do once he's in the White House. We'll be right back. What should Donald Trump do on his first day in office? His supporters in Ohio certainly have some thoughts on that. Here's Martin Savage.
These illegal moochers from Mexico come in. We got to get rid of all the illegal aliens.
If President-elect Donald Trump's looking to organize his to-do list once he's in the White House, he might want to give a listen to the callers at station 570 WKBN in Youngstown.
We need to get people back to work. Jobs, jobs, jobs.
This used to be prime Democrat turf, but as the manufacturing jobs disappeared and businesses closed, many here, like their factories, turned a rusty red, crossing over to Trump.
I'd like to see him address the health care problem.
Caller after caller added on to what they want their president to do.
Social Security. We haven't gotten a raise in 7 years.
Most want the new administration to focus on immigration.
Send Mexico an estimated bill for the wall.
Get rid of Obamacare. Bring back jobs. And if possible,
Rip up that Iran nuclear deal. Go after and indict Hillary Clinton.
At the Royal Oaks, Youngstown's oldest watering hole, I talked across the bar with more celebrating Trump backers.
I expected this. I was very confident, actually, in the election.
Jim Novicki's been a Democrat all his life, until now.
What do you want to see Donald Trump do first?
First thing I would like to see him do is pick a great cabinet. He's got a big job there.
Dave Ogle says the same thing. Trump needs to surround himself with the right people.
I want to see the cabinet. I think he will be a CEO and kind of sit there and let the cabinet do all the work. That's what I think. And then I want to see who they're going to pick for the Supreme Court.
Filling the Supreme Court's also near the top of many wish lists. But it isn't long before we're back to the wall.
One of the first priorities, I would say, would secure our borders. I want this to be a country again. Build a wall, yes, but that's to me that's a rhetorical term. Building a wall doesn't mean brick and mortar, okay?
You hear that a lot. The wall Trump has spoken so much about, to many Trump voters, is not really a wall at all.
The wall. What is that? Build it? Don't build it? It's a real wall? It's not a real wall?
Yeah, I don't know whether actual physical wall is the thing to do. I think there's probably other ways that he can curb some of it coming in.
Which brings us back to another favorite fix, Obamacare.
I would get rid of it and start all over. You have to come up with something. You have to take care of people who can't take care of themselves. Everybody knows that.
But you can't talk to Trump voters without talking about something else. All those protesters.
You haven't even given the guy a chance yet.
Most I talk to don't believe the demonstrations are spontaneous anger, but organized.
This is the government they want. They want chaos. They want anarchy. And they're going to give it to us. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.
Many of those, when they start talking about the protests, the Trump voters, they say it's disrespectful of the office of president, disrespectful of the outcome of the democratically run election. They say, after all, when President Obama won in 2008, did Republicans storm the streets? Anderson.
Good question, Martin Savage. Thanks very much. A lot more ahead in the next hour of 360. We're keeping an eye on those protests going on around the country. Second night of protests. We'll be take you out on the streets and have a lot more ahead. And welcome to our second live hour of 360. Protests continuing in the streets in some cities in the United States as people are taking the streets for a second night demonstrating against President-elect Donald Trump. Again, this is happening in multiple cities across the country, including Dallas, Philadelphia. You're looking at live pictures right now there. Earlier today, President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump met for the first time at the White House. The president said it was a wide-ranging conversation, that his number one priority in the coming months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures success.
I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party, and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together to deal with the many challenges that we face. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please. Sorry.
Michelle Kosinski joins me now from outside the White House. What did President-elect Trump say about the meeting?
I understand. Yeah. Well, despite the gorilla in the room being that he wants to roll back virtually all of President Obama's policies, and the fact that one day prior, White House staff was openly weeping, today it was all about let's get along for now, let's put our best foot forward and reassure America. So we heard Donald Trump call President Obama a very good man. He said he might want to work with him in the future and even consult with him. Listen.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going
We
to...
also heard the president at the very end say that Donald Trump, I mean, he said this in a joking way, but he said, you know, one thing you don't want to do is answer reporters' questions when it's in a scrum like this, which was kind of interesting from one president to the next one. But, you know, the White House said that this was focused on the transition, because we heard President Obama call it an excellent meeting. What does that really mean under the circumstances? It looks like even though the president called it wide-ranging and they did go over domestic and foreign policy, really they were talking about let's have this transition be orderly and efficient. Anderson.
And it went on for some 90 minutes, which I believe was much longer than it was supposed to go for. When you think, it's just an extraordinary image today, because obviously these men have said a lot of things about each other over the years. Do you think today's meeting actually thawed any of that tension, or was this just out of respect for the office, this is how things are done?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, when you look at some of the things that have been said, now everybody's going back and replaying these videos because it's such a stark, almost comedic contrast to what's happening now. You know, that Donald Trump called President Obama very stupid and incompetent, said he was the founder of ISIS, et cetera, et cetera. President Obama said that Donald Trump was dangerous and unfit to be president of the United States. Obviously, they want to put that aside. You know, they both have the same interest of seeing America move forward and be successful. Ultimately, I thought it was really interesting, though, later when you go to the White House and say, you know, all those things that President Obama said during the campaign trail, what about that? And the White House isn't going to back away from that. They reiterated today, in fact, after this meeting, that President Obama meant everything he said on the campaign trail. That still stands. Anderson.
Michelle Kosinski. Michelle, thanks very much. After his meeting with President Trump, headed to a meeting with House Speaker Paul Ryan. Again, a positive tone, capping a campaign relationship that was certainly no mutual admiration society. Phil Mattingly tonight reports.
A relationship defined by tepid acceptance at best.
Nothing's a blank check. You never give anybody, for any reason, a blank check on anything.
And downright antagonism at worst.
Maybe he doesn't know how to win.
House Speaker Paul Ryan and President-elect Donald Trump for months center stage in a delicate dance of clashing politics, personalities, and policies. Meeting face-to-face today in Washington, now reliant on one another for success.
Donald Trump had one of the most impressive victories we've ever seen, and we're going to turn that victory into progress for the American people.
So we had a very good meeting. A very detailed meeting, and we're going to lower taxes, as you know. We're going to fix health care and make it more affordable and better.
For Trump, Ryan represents a man who can bridge the gap to a still skeptical core of the establishment GOP, an explicitly stated goal in Trump's victory speech early Wednesday morning.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
For Ryan, a president that can finally sign policy priorities that have been collecting dust despite nearly 7 years in the House majority.
This Congress, this House majority, this Senate majority has already demonstrated and proven we're able to pass that legislation and put it on the president's desk. Problem is, President Obama vetoed it. Now we have President Trump coming, who is asking us to do this.
Advisors tell CNN both men have had positive things to say about the other in the wake of private meetings and post-election phone calls. But the two have more than just a strained relationship standing in their way. Ryan has faced criticism from conservative House Republicans for not fully supporting Trump as the nominee. And Ryan splits with Trump on crucial issues like entitlement reform, trade, and his hardline immigration stance. But for now, at least, it appears each man is looking to focus on where they have common ground, rather than their differences.
How do we make sure that when his hand comes off the Bible, when he's sworn in as president, we are hitting the ground running? And we are very excited about working with him to make sure that that's the case.
And Phil joins me now from outside Trump Tower in New York. I mean, Donald Trump has a long and in many ways controversial agenda. Paul Ryan, for his part, has his own lengthy agenda. You've been talking to GOP officials. Which gets priority next year?
Well, Anderson, I can tell you, I've been talking to a number of lobbyists, too, who'd be able to add a couple zeros to their retainers if they could answer that question. Look, I do think it's kind of one of the unknowns, partially because you don't necessarily know how firm Donald Trump is on a number of his policy proposals. But in talking to Republican officials, I think this underscores their willingness to kind of put the past behind them, the excitement, a tangible excitement about the possibility of moving some of the issues forward that they haven't been able to over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. That's what they're focused on right now. There's low-hanging fruit. There are areas of agreement on health care, on tax policy that they're almost certainly going to start with first. The big question, though, is how willing is Donald Trump to work with House Republicans when they diverge from what his proposals are? That we don't have an answer to yet. Anderson?
All right, Phil Mattingly. Phil, thanks very much. Joining me again, John King, Kirsten Power, Gloria Borger, Kayleigh McEnany, Van Jones, Maria Cardona, and Jack Kingston. Maria, let's start with you. Obviously, you're a Hillary Clinton supporter. Obviously, you are not happy about the results. What do you make of what you have seen, though, over the last 36 hours in terms of this transition?
A couple of things, Anderson. I agree with Van and I think everybody on this panel that so far what we have seen in the transition should give us hope. But here's the problem with that. Donald Trump's speech absolutely had the perfect tone. It had the right words. But 5 minutes of nice words is not going to make up for 15 months of what all of these communities that are now on the streets, and many more who haven't said anything but are incredibly afraid of what's going to happen under a Trump administration. It's going to take a lot more than just those 5 minutes of nice words to calm them. There are stories, not just of the folks who are attacking Muslims. There are stories of Trump supporters going up to women and grabbing them and calling them the C word. There are stories of Trump supporters yelling at Latinos, "Spick, you wetback, go back to Mexico." There are stories of schools whose principals have had to put out a letter to their students telling them, if you are LGBT, if you are Muslim, if you're Latino, if you are undocumented or have parents that are undocumented, you will feel safe in this school. You will not be bullied. You will be protected. To me, that signals that we are entering into an era that we have not seen in a generation. And I agree with Van, it is dangerous. And I think that Donald Trump has a tremendous opportunity, a challenge, but a tremendous opportunity to address this, but address it in a way that is very particular to all of the communities of color who really are reeling and are hurt about this.
But let's, look, there are demonstrations on the streets, but this was a valid election.
Absolutely.
2 people ran. Donald Trump won.
That's right.
We've had elections in the past. We haven't necessarily seen demonstrations like this. So, there is some frustration I'm hearing from Trump supporters who say, well, look, this was a legitimate election, and why are people now protesting in the streets?
I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. First of all, yes, legitimate election. Donald Trump won the electoral vote, but guess what? Hillary Clinton is 2 million votes ahead of him in the popular vote.
But you know what? So what?
I understand that, but that actually adds to the rawness of what this election result is.
But there's always half the country that feels raw after an election. We don't necessarily see that half demonstrating in the streets.
But one last point, though. I completely agree. And to a certain extent, all of the Hillary Clinton supporters are going to have to understand that that is the path, and that they at some point have got to give Donald Trump a chance. Follow her lead, follow President Obama's lead. But also he said he wants to be the president for everybody. And if he really wants to do that, then he has to understand that the responsibility on his shoulders is that he also has to be the president for all of those communities who he has offended.
I don't think he needs to worry about these protesters at this point. Frankly, when they're going outside Trump Tower and saying impeach Donald Trump when he's not even sworn in, and when they're blocking Highway 101 in Los Angeles and writing all kinds of foul language things on police cars and also vandalizing other property, I think that they just don't understand the way a republic and a democracy works. It wasn't a legitimate election. There were no irregularities. His tone at 4 a.m. Wednesday morning was magnificent. And I was in the room, and I can tell you it was an inspirational American moment. Hillary Clinton was very good yesterday. Barack Obama, absolutely today. And what you've seen is great American leadership. And I think that sends a signal that will be heard throughout the land, and it will overcome the voices of protesters. I think in the days ahead, as he picks his cabinet, as he picks more and more of his leadership, and they're going to be of the type of people that Mike Pence is and Kellyanne Conway, and people who are quality, who know how politics works, knows human relationships. I think these people are going to calm down and get on board. And I mean these people in a sense of the protesters.
Van, do you believe that as people start to see, okay, well, some of these names in the cabinet are names we've heard before and have been in government before, and this isn't a complete revolution, that will things sort of calm down and normalize?
Well, look, there's a couple of things. First of all, those people in the streets are not Hillary Clinton supporters necessarily. I think it's very important we understand the dynamics here. Those people in the streets are generally people who didn't feel that the Democrats or Hillary Clinton or really anybody was speaking for them, and so you've got a challenge now. You've got those young rebels out there, and we've got to listen to them and hear. I think that's an important thing. With respect to, listen, Donald Trump is doing well right now. That's important for people to get. There is a trust deficit. That is true. Partly the reason the trust deficit comes is that there were moments in the campaign he did well, and then he would change, and then he would do well again. And so people don't know yet, are we on solid ground? Right. So I think it's important for his supporters to understand there is a trust deficit. He's doing well right now, but these young people, Hillary Clinton go out there right now and tell them to sit down, they walk right past.
But that's all the more encouraging, though, because these young people, when they find out Donald Trump ran against the establishment, he ran against bringing ethics back to Washington, he ran for bringing jobs back. A lot of these people are millennials, and I'm here to tell you as a millennial myself, my millennial friends, they care about jobs, they care about student loan debt. They don't have that right now. And when Donald Trump brings jobs back to this country, these young protesters are going to be very happy.
We got to take a quick break. We'll have Congressman right when we come back. Also tonight, after everything Donald Trump has said about women, which were much discussed, obviously, during the election, with the prospect of having the first woman president in American history. Why didn't more women vote for Hillary Clinton? Certainly a question a lot of Democrats and Democratic women are asking. It's a question that's about as complex and nuanced as they get. We'll look at that ahead as well. Welcome back. A second night of protest against the election of Donald Trump. You're looking at scenes from Philadelphia. The main question is what he will do, of course, now when he takes office. Here's what he said after a meeting on Capitol Hill today.
A lot of priorities. A lot of really great priorities. People will be very, very happy.
What are the top three?
Well, we have a lot. We're going to look very strongly at immigration. We're going to look at border. We're going to look very strongly at health care. And we're looking at jobs. Big league jobs.
Donald Trump just tweeted about his meeting today, saying a fantastic day in D.C., met with President Obama for first time, really good meeting, great chemistry. Melania liked Mrs. O a lot. There you go. Is that the first official tweet as president-elect? I'm not sure.
No, I think he may have tweeted.
He tweeted something after
something election.
Okay, all right.
But this is sort of an alternate universe here. I mean, it's pre-honeymoon, and these people are. They don't like each other. They haven't met each other, which was really stunning because they'd never met before. But it's kind of hard to believe that Donald Trump comes in and it says he has great respect for Obama, the man whose citizenship he challenged for 5 years before. And the president, I mean, showed him the same respect that he had been shown by Bush. And I know that that affected him a great deal.
Yes.
When Bush was so gracious and generous, and now they've become really good friends. And I think Mrs. Obama wanted to take around Melania Trump because she had young children in the White House, and Melania Trump has a young son, and she wanted to tell her what it's like to live in this bubble and how it is to raise your child that way. But nothing has happened. You know, they were all pitch perfect because they had to be for the international community, keep the markets calm,
and for our
and out of respect for the office and the country they love. Right. But let me just say that nothing has happened yet. He's not in office. There's no legislation. Nothing. I don't want to be the skunk at the garden party, but
plenty of time for
what
fighting.
Trump said, the sound you played from Trump is very important, though, because he was asked what are your top 3 priorities, and he wasn't. It didn't sound like he was ready for the answer. So then he thought about it. He said healthcare, immigration, talked about the border, and then jobs, big league jobs. What the Republican leadership is telling him, and I assume what he takes away from the election is do the big leagues jobs part first. Sequencing matters here. If they repeal healthcare right away, that's picking a fight with Democrats. If that's what Donald Trump wants, then that's what he should do. He should do health care first and pick that fight, or do the immigration bill first and pick that fight, if that's how he wants to start his presidency. But if he does a tax package, he'll have the Republican votes. Democrats won't like it, but a president generally gets his tax package. If you add into that, either in that legislation or a separate legislation, the infrastructure projects that Donald Trump talked about in the campaign, Democrats will want that. He'll have some trouble with Republicans on that. They'll want to say, how are you going to pay for this? But Republican governors will love that because you're creating jobs in the country. So there's an opportunity early on to do a big Republican priority tax reform that includes some Democratic proposals included.
What about on trade issues too? Because there are, I mean, there's a lot of liberals in the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders,
that's going to take a little bit of time. And just quickly on the point of quickly on the point where he said that he's going to consult President Obama in the future. He looks I don't think that's going to happen often, but there are times. Sometimes we never find out about these things. Questions of war and peace.
That's right.
Donald Trump will be the 45th president in the history of the Republic. It is an exclusive club. They have made war and peace decisions. So sometimes they talk about that. But President Obama is about to take his last foreign trip. He's going to meet with Angela Merkel. He's going to meet with other leaders who are nervous about Donald Trump. I assume they will talk after that trip. We may never hear about that. Just about what the world thinks.
I want to say this as a candidate. One reason you want to meet with your former opposition or somebody who was on the opposition team, it actually brings emotional closure to the campaign, not just for you, but for all your supporters. If you look at that tweet that Donald Trump put out today, that was sending a signal to millions and millions of Americans who follow him. And that, okay, the campaign is over. Let's get on with the business of the American people. And I'm very, very positive in that.
Well, it is interesting. And again, as you said, this is a honeymoon period. But I mean, I keep thinking back to, interviews I did with Donald Trump during the primary season early on, where he said, I can be presidential. I can be different people in different situations. When I'm in Palm Beach, I can have society people really like me, and when I'm on a construction site, it's a different thing. And maybe that's some of what we're seeing.
So it's kind of like a chameleon, right? And we are now seeing that chameleon act the role. The hope is
chameleon is a negative.
He can shift gears. He can go slow or fast.
No, I meant to your point. He can act this part, right? And my hope is that he will continue on this path. And I think that going on some sort of legislative plan to do something in a bipartisan way will go a long way to sort of calm people, because to your point, it has been 2 days.
It's not an act. I just have to say, it's not an act. Donald Trump, anyone who took the time to look at his business and the $10 billion brand he built, knows that he is someone who achieves, someone who knows how to negotiate, someone who is very likable. The First Lady went in there, First Lady Melania Trump.
Kirsten made this point in the last hour, which is anybody's interviewed him knows there is a very charming side to Donald Trump.
Both the
very
First
gentlemanly
to give credit to the fact, look, Donald Trump attacked a lot of people during the election, but Barack Obama was ripping him limb to limb for the last couple of
and
weeks.
all the surrogates.
And he's still able to come in and be this way. And look, and that was my experience with him. I have been very critical to him on air, and he knows that, and he told me that. But he still is able to interact and respond.
Look at Ben Carson.
John King said something I want to add.
I got a great point.
I want to
Ben Carson came on board.
John King is trying to lay out a pathway to unity. I just want to add to it. because I think it's important for people at home to figure out how can we actually not have a catastrophe here. Kayleigh has pointed out over and over and over again this outreach that Donald Trump did to the African American community on the campaign trail. It landed very badly because of the tone and the message, but that is something to add. You talked about the tax reform piece and infrastructure, but also a major push to uplift the poor.
How about this one?
Wait, hold on. Let me just add something in. Donald Trump has actually just sent out another tweet about the protests that we've been seeing. He said, just had a very open and successful presidential election. Now professional protesters incited by the media are protesting very unfair.
I think somebody needs to take away his Twitter account again.
Okay, so that's not so cool.
Right.
Okay, so let's.
But I mean, there are groups. I mean, we talked about this last night. The one in New York was some socialist group. I don't know.
Well, that was a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which,
I'd like to know, and a sincere question, not just snarky, but why aren't they working? And it might be because of the economy, but how do thousands of people? No, seriously. Well, I don't understand how thousands of people across the food and plain.
That's how worried they are. That's how worried they are.
I think
okay, now I'm going to get started.
No. I'm just saying. It is. There's a reason these are happening. There's a reason these are happening at night, which is people have jobs during the day and then they have a free time at night.
I don't understand how the left works.
And that's exactly how worried they are. And to your interview with Mr. Khan, which was fabulous and very touching as he always is, he said something that I think is also very relevant in this whole protest era of healing that Donald Trump needs to face. He said that Donald Trump needs to tell his supporters, he needs to engage his supporters and tell them to essentially knock it off.
No, wait, I got to say this. As somebody who's been on the campaign trail, I have to say, we're hearing a lot of, there's stories out there, there's hearsay. I promise you, if that was going on the wholesale basis, the media would rush in and show pictures.
Wait till tomorrow. Wait till tomorrow.
Well, I'd love to see it.
I mean, we should actually.
I'm not dismissing that it's not happening. I'm saying if it's happening wholesale the way it's being reported.
Let's take a break. Melania Trump, we're going to take a look at what she may do in the White House. She's going to be the only second foreign-born First Lady. Her journey to the White House in a moment.
There will be good times and hard.
Well, as we've been reporting on, President-elect Trump and his wife Melania spent the day in Washington taking the first steps in the transition to their new life as the next first couple. While the President-elect met with President Obama in the Oval Office, Mrs. Trump visited with First Lady Michelle Obama. They toured the White House residence and reportedly talked about raising kids in the White House. Trump's 10-year-old son Barron is obviously about the same age as Malia Obama was when her family moved into the White House in 2008. Randy Kay tonight takes a look at Mrs. Trump's path to First Lady.
It will be my honor and privilege to serve this country. I will be an advocate for women and for children.
Melania Trump, just days before learning she would be the next First Lady of the United States. At this speech in Berwyn, Pennsylvania, she spoke of her love for this country as a little girl growing up under communist rule in Slovenia.
We always knew about the incredible place called America. America was the word for freedom and opportunity. America meant if you could dream it, you could become it.
Throughout the race, Melania was somewhat of a reluctant campaigner, often staying home with the couple's young son Barron. The Trumps reportedly have a cook but no nanny. Early on in the campaign, she was more often seen than heard. In fact, it wasn't until the Wisconsin primary in April that Melania officially stumped for her husband.
I'm very proud of him. He's a hard worker, he's kind, he has a great heart. He's tough, he's smart.
In March, during an interview with Anderson Cooper, Melania shared how she feels about being compared to Jackie Kennedy.
I see around that they compare me to Jackie Kennedy. It's an honor, but of course we're in 21st century and I will be different. And she had a great style and she did a lot of good stuff. But this is different time now.
As a Slovenian immigrant, Melania will be only the second foreign-born First Lady and the first in modern times. President John Adams' wife, Louisa Adams, was also born outside the United States in London. She was the First Lady nearly 200 years ago. Melania Knaus, as she was formerly known, became a naturalized citizen in 2006. At 5'11", she was once a successful model, meeting Donald Trump at a New York Fashion Week party back in 1998. She told People magazine she thought he had, quote, sparkle, and later became his third wife. Melania once graced the covers of glamour magazines and sold her own line of jewelry on QVC. She also appeared in this Aflac commercial. Aflac! As First Lady, Melania, who is 46, plans to focus on women and children. She hopes to end cyberbullying and teach children to treat others with compassion.
We have to find a better way to talk to each other, to disagree with each other, to respect each other.
From Fifth Avenue to Pennsylvania Avenue, Melania Trump will soon be First Lady. Randy Kay, CNN, Orlando, Florida.
And joining me now, CNN political commentators Maria Cardona and Amanda Carpenter and Ana Navarro. Also CNN chief political commentator Gloria Borger. I mean, it is, Gloria, they're both obviously very strong women in different ways with different paths to the White House, and yet they do have this commonality of, they're going to be raising, in the case of Melania Trump, a son in the White House.
And I think both of them wanted to be protective of their children, and I think that's clearly what they talked about today. I also think that Michelle Obama took a while to find her way and what she wanted to do. And she ended up, along with Jill Biden, doing something for veterans' families, which became her big thing in the White House. I think Melania has already said that, and people have, made their jokes about her husband and his tweeting, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a serious issue, and she can have an impact if she can take advantage of it, and that's it's a difficult road for a first lady.
Maria, certainly Democrats expected obviously Hillary Clinton to win, and expected more women, I think, to be supportive of Hillary Clinton. As you look at the election results, I mean, what went wrong? Because, I mean, you were convinced Hillary Clinton was going to win.
Absolutely. Not only were we convinced she was going to win, we were convinced that she was going to get a majority of college-educated white women, and she didn't, or college-educated white voters, and she didn't. That, from what I'm seeing of the information that has come in since then, that spectrum of the electorate started eroding. College-educated white women and men started eroding. That spiked after the Access Hollywood tape for obvious reasons, especially the support among women. But then with the FBI and the WikiLeaks, that started to go down. And there was no additional scandal involving women with Donald Trump to be able to offset that. And so I think that a lot of these women who were Republican-leaning but were disgusted by Donald Trump, with the FBI letter, I think they started thinking, okay, maybe not so much. Frankly, what the Republicans were saying, I think, ended up being true. They didn't want another scandalous, person in the White House. They kind of were sick of the status quo. The status quo and the WikiLeaks stuff, I think, started sticking to her yet again, and it really drowned out her ability to get through on the family economics message.
Amanda, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of the fundamentals were just against Hillary Clinton. It was going to be a Republican year, and she positioned herself as the establishment candidate. She actually ran on being Obama's third term. I heard Republicans years ago saying, wouldn't it be great if we could convince everyone she would be Obama's third term? It was totally a gift, and I think the Access Hollywood tapes were very bad for Trump, but when the other things came out, it reminded everyone of her significant flaws, character issues, national security risks. It all just kind of came together in the perfect storm. And I know Republican women who were very concerned about Donald Trump's comments towards women. And they said, well, that's personal to me, but these other things outweigh that at this point in time. Yeah,
and I mean, what a lot of Trump supporters all along, Kellyanne Conway was one of them who we talked to in the last hour, was saying all along that there's an enthusiasm gap. You have more people who are enthusiastic about Donald Trump, and we certainly saw that in the results. Though fewer Republicans voted for Trump than voted for McCain or Romney, a lot fewer, by many more millions, voted for Hillary Clinton than voted for Obama.
Well, we knew it from the start, right, that both these candidates had historic low approval ratings amongst Americans. And we also knew from the start that Hillary Clinton had a likability problem and had a trustworthiness problem. And then there was this drip, drip, drip during the entire campaign coming out of the emails issues. If you tell me, to tell you what this campaign should have been called, it should be called Sex, Lies, and Videotapes and emails. We had the email story go on for 18, 19 months. They were never able to address it properly because it never ended.
And it also reaffirmed, it wasn't just out of the blue, it reaffirmed all the pre-existing beliefs and concerns about Hillary Clinton.
And let me tell you, if I was a Democrat, I would be so upset and disappointed right now at at the Clintons, at Hillary Clinton, at Bill Clinton, at Clinton World, because they knew they were going to run 8 years later. They knew what the scrutiny that came with running for president was, and they needed to have behaved in an impeccable manner that would have passed muster and would have not brought back all these memories of Clinton's scandals.
Yeah,
They were never able to overcome the trustworthiness.
They would dispute that.
But here's the thing we learned. We learned that women don't just vote for women because they're women.
Yeah.
And I think that what the Clinton campaign believed is that Donald Trump was making the gender argument for them because of the Access Hollywood videotape. They really didn't have to do that.
Well, they believe the same thing with Latinos and with African Americans.
Exactly.
They're going to come out and vote against Donald Trump.
Exactly.
And got to give people something to vote for.
Right. And what they discovered was that non-college educated women went against them 2-1. They voted very much like their husbands.
Right.
And millennial women always believe there's going to be a woman president someday, so it doesn't have to be this woman.
That's exactly right. The white millennial women also did not come out in droves for her, but non-white women in all categories came out in droves for her.
We got to leave there. Thank you. Good discussion. Just ahead, another surprising result in one of the most unpredictable elections on record. Why a big chunk of Latino voters in Florida cast their ballots for Donald Trump. We'll look at that ahead.
I think that Donald.
Well, Hillary Clinton won the Latino vote on Tuesday, 65% to Trump's 29%, but her share of Latino votes was less than President Obama's in 2012. In Florida, more than a third of Latinos backed Trump. Randy Kaye talked to some of them.
I'll take the vodka frita.
At this popular Cuban diner just outside Orlando, Latinos who voted for President-elect Donald Trump are holding their heads high.
I'm so proud. I'm Puerto Rican myself, and I'm super proud to be able to vote for Trump.
It feels so much sweeter now that the silent majority has won.
To me, it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Thank you.
CNN's exit polls show 35% of Latino voters in Florida chose Trump, despite him painting some Mexicans as criminals and rapists, and regardless of his plan to build a wall and deport millions of illegal immigrants.
I have a problem with people coming illegally. They need to tell us who they are.
We don't want corruption to come in here. We don't want drug traffickers. We don't want people bent on committing crimes. Who doesn't want to get rid of those people?
And about that wall at the southern border?
I am very happy about the wall, and I hope it does happen. I mean, if you're going to come to my country, come here legally. If you don't like the way we are running things, then go back to where you belong.
This millennial from Cuba waited 5 years to get his U.S. citizenship. This was the first time he could vote in a presidential election, and voted Trump.
So he talks about this deportation force and deporting all these illegals. You're on board with that?
Absolutely. They broke laws. Now they have to face punishment for those laws.
Dr. Juan Torres, who waited 10 years to become a citizen, does worry people he knows could be deported, but
the bottom line is that they broke the law. When I came to this country, I came through the front door.
So you think everyone should go through the front door, as you say, like you did?
If you go to somebody's house, you go through the front door.
Beyond immigration, these voters think Trump's team will defeat ISIS.
He's not negotiating with terrorists that are killing children, that are raping little girls. He wants to exterminate them, and I agree with that 100%.
He gets high marks on the economy and jobs, too.
He is a businessman, and that to me was very important because I am a businesswoman myself. I feel that he will grow this economy for sure, take us out of debt.
Latinos need jobs. The number one thing that they are concerned with is the economy, jobs. And Donald Trump is a job creator. He was a job creator all his life. This is what he knows how to do.
And while they admit he's hardly the perfect candidate,
I don't personally love him. I'm not in love with Trump. I'm in love with his ideas and what he has to offer for our country.
They are quick to defend what others call derogatory comments about Latinos, and tweets like this one on Cinco de Mayo. That's the president-elect eating a taco salad. The caption reads, "I love Hispanics."
I would put my foot in my mouth also. So we have to be compassionate to people and say, well, he's an average individual.
And Anderson, what surprised me most about talking to these voters is how forgiving they are of Donald Trump, despite his insults to the Latino community throughout this campaign. They basically explain it away, saying that he's misunderstood. They love the fact that he isn't politically correct. And they really latched on to his campaign slogan, Make America Great Again. They fought for years to get here. Many of them spent years waiting to get citizenship here in the United States. They love this country, Anderson, and they believe that he does too.
Randy Kay. Randy, thanks. Coming up, with some African-American voters in North Carolina think about Trump's victory and what it means for President Obama's legacy. Well, some 8% of African-American voters supported Donald Trump. 88% voted for Hillary Clinton. Now, we wanted to hear what some African-American voters in North Carolina are thinking. Gary Tuckman tonight reports.
In the heart of Charlotte, North Carolina, inside the Midnight Diner, many customers surprised and unsettled at what was confirmed in the wee hours after midnight on election night.
When you heard the news that Donald Trump won, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
I was shocked. I really was.
I feel hurt. It's a bad feeling. It's a real bad feeling.
I thought it was an Instagram joke.
I was heartbroken because I said, I don't trust Trump. I believe he's the devil. And he's not going to do right by minorities.
A Clinton campaign concern came true on election night. The great majority of African Americans supported Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump, but many of them, not as enthusiastic about her as they were for Barack Obama, did not come out to vote. Mercedes Stroud did vote and cast her ballot for Clinton, but knows many other African American Clinton supporters who did not go to the polls.
Those people that didn't vote, that could have been Hillary winning.
At the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, others who voted for Clinton with similar stories.
Yes. Almost all my family did not vote.
Do you wish you did more to encourage your family and friends to go out and vote, those who didn't?
Yeah, I wish I did more, especially when it comes to encouraging them to wait in line. 'Cause I know some of the lines are like 3 hours long, especially on the last day of early voting, the line was 5 hours long. And so I guess keeping up that enthusiasm to actually wait in line and go vote, yeah, I wish I did a little more to advocate for that.
So what does the presidential torch being passed from Barack Obama to Donald Trump mean for the legacy of the first African-American president?
Do you think Barack Obama's legacy is hurt by the woman he wanted to become president losing to Donald Trump?
I don't feel like his legacy is hurt because Barack Obama had a great presidency. And I feel like anything he left behind was great.
I would like
Back at the diner, some with similar sentiments.
everything Barack Obama did, I think it'll stand on its own. Everything he did, everything he accomplished.
But others concerned about the legacy of a president they so admire.
I did feel that was a slap in the face to Barack Obama because he was on the side of Hillary Clinton.
And for her, that made Election Day even more of a letdown. Gary Tuckman, CNN, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Well, joining me now is CNN presidential historian Douglas Brinkley, a history professor at Rice University and Rosa Parks biographer. So, Douglas, where do you see President Obama's place in the history of presidents, or is it too soon to tell? Is that only kind of written years later?
It's written years later, but we can judge him as being successful right now, even though this is a blow, Hillary Clinton's loss. I mean, he has a 55% approval rating. By the time he does this transition well, which he will, and does his farewell address, I think he'll be around 58-60% leaving office. He's a two-term president, no major scandals, 2 Supreme Court justices, the killing of Osama bin Laden, and he's going to kind of grow in stature. I think people are going to miss him, and we felt his greatness, I thought, today with the way he dealt with Donald Trump with such civility, and really was America's president when we needed him today.
Yeah, I mean, historically, how crucial is that that outgoing and incoming president working together? How much does personality, how much they actually like each other play into it?
Well, it's a big thing. Each one, like Truman and Eisenhower couldn't stand each other. Ike got along with Kennedy okay. Nixon had almost a fetish of liking Lyndon Johnson. Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan couldn't stand each other. And so it just all depends. Obviously, Barack Obama has no use for Donald Trump, but he is a student of Nelson Mandela's School of Reconciliation. He knows what happened to John Lewis at Selma. on the bridge, and when he did the Freedom Rides. Yet John Lewis a few years ago went back to Alabama and hugged Anderson, the people that beat him, and that we have to heal sometime. You know, Leonard Cohen just died a little bit ago, and Leonard Cohen has a song called Anthem that he wrote about, you know, the light comes through the cracks in society in the song. And there's kind of, Barack Obama brought a lot of light to American life right now the last few years. And the death of Leonard Cohen tonight, I think, is a good time to listen to songs like Hallelujah and Anthem and reflect on what the 8 years of Obama's presidency's meant. I think it's been a positive one by and large for the country.
You also have to take into account the incredible, recession, the economic situation that Barack Obama inherited as he entered office. I mean, that's something that I think maybe, memories are often short and one forgets of what it was like 8 years ago. But I think in the history books, that will certainly also probably be a big part of his legacy.
Giant. When you go to the Obama Presidential Library in 4 or 5 years, they'll be showing what it was like in the Great Recession when Barack Obama came in and the economy was in tatters, how hard he fought to get unemployment to the numbers it is now, 4.9. He always wanted it below 5%. A museum like the Obama Library will show what it was really like for people, what the auto industry was like in Detroit. And he came in and saved General Motors. And Mitt Romney maybe lost that Midwest when he said, "Let Detroit die." People in Ohio don't like Detroit dying because that means losing jobs in, Youngstown or Toledo or Akron. And he was a remarkable politician, and we saw Barack Obama's magic, even though it didn't pay off in Florida, North Carolina, Ohio at the end of the campaign, trying to lift Hillary Clinton along with him. Last, it didn't work, but I think the public actually admires the cut of his jib, and he's going to come out just fine in history.
Douglas Brinkley, good to talk to you as always, Doug. Thanks very much. We'll be right back.